Good morning, everybody. We are at Buy the Dip, and we're actually moving out of the dip territory. We'll see what actually is happening today on our markets because for about 3 days, the tariffs that were announced on, quote, Liberation Day, which was when we were streaming last week, pretty well wrecked the markets. But we're going to talk about what happened after the fact of that, what happens now, and where we go with that. There have been some changes. There are countries that are coming to the table. China is getting absolutely hammered by all of this, and a load of other stuff is happening that is going to change the way that we do trade, markets, and the way that our money works. But we'll talk about all of that and more for, let's be completely frank, probably the entire top half of the show, and figure out what everybody's opinions are on it. Trust me right now, all the people who used to be vaccine experts over on X are now tariff experts, so we'll talk about all of that as we go. In other news, after talking about buying the dip and singing a very, very, very prominent 90s song as our opening lyric here, we do have to talk about something a bit more tragic. A mother of a twin brother has to speak out now based on the latest attempt by the news to get us divided amongst ourselves because of socioeconomic and political divisions. So we'll talk about that. My take on all of this, I don't want to go too deep into what this and let the investigation do its course, but there are a lot of people that have a lot of opinions about the Austin Metcalf and Carmelo Anthony case, so we'll talk about that. A large amount of protests rise up across the country this week. They talk about 1,300 in various cities, with about 1 million people showing up to protest. We'll go over some of this, some of the opinions on that, and some of the pushback coming from the administration on this. And Ryan Ruth, the attempted Trump assassin from the Mar-a-Lago, may have some deeper ties to the Ukraine than many of us thought. We will actually talk about all of this, what happened with that, and where it goes. Plus, we've got things I like and things that I hate at the bottom of the show, so stick around. It is going to be a fantastic time. We got a lot to go over here today, but I don't think that we're going to go with the full 4 hours that we did last week, so strap yourselves in. Find a little bit of coffee. I know that I didn't take my own advice because I have no coffee over here today. But get yourself some breakfast, find some friends, and get yourself off to work today on this commuter hour program. And I put my hand upon your hip. When I dip, you dip, we dip. I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. The title of the song that is playing on the Video Game Study Lounge, which you should all go and check out for your background music when we're not doing contemporary, or you could also go with Radio Cutman. They are both put off by the same record producer, who I got to talk to my boy Decca and see if we can't get him on the pod at some point. And I've also got to start sending messages out so we can get more guests on, now that I think we've got the schedule ironed out here. So we can do that. But the song that was playing when we started off was called Go Straight, which sounds like our friend Vong's dream conversion camp. I don't know. Maybe. Anyway, good morning. Hi. Good morning. Enjoy your commute. If you are commuting right now, my name is Jay Edgar, and we have a lot to go over here today. So, yeah, it's going to be a heavy one. I don't think we're going to go 4 hours this time. I think that... I think we're going to fill up the better part of 2, and we might move into that third one. I don't think we're going to hit 3, but we might move into that third hour. So we'll see what happens with this. Lot to go there. Before we get started, do make sure you guys go check out great programming, such as the Daily Ignoramus, which is now the weekly noticed, my good friend Steven. Go check him out. That is a fantastic time. I catch that whenever I can. Unfortunately, work schedules don't always align with us anymore, but go check that out. Overruled and Crimeland with Katie Zed, who Katie Zed looks like she just did a fairly introspective look into the Austin Metcalf, Carmelo Anthony situation that went on there. She, of course, looking at the arrest records and the arrest history that goes along with this and trying to get to the bottom of this. I am not going to go into that. There's going to be some of it based on the fact of the articles that I have up here, but again, and I talked about this in the cold open, that one of the issues that I have with this is, of course, this is a fairly ambiguous case, and it was pushed out from being a local news story into a national news story with limited release of information in a way that kind of engineers us, once again, one of my biggest complaints with this, to try to pit us against each other based on lines of race and socioeconomic status and a whole host of other things. It's George Floyd all over again, is all that it is. So I will defend my position on that, of course, as we are going through this, but we're not going to talk about that until we get done with our tariffs news. And also, keep an eye out if you're on the Rumble side for the Porch Boys returning at some point. I still have to figure out the confirmation of when that hits again. Without Seawall, whose work schedule does not allow him to continue with the program. I think they're testing. I think they're trying to figure out how all of this goes, but go and check that out. Anyway, we've got a lot of stuff to go over here today. Let's get the live chat up here. Get the Rumble chat up around this room, where I can see who is watching over on that platform, and I do hope that you do. My little chubby co-host over here is wearing my Mac hat today, so we'll talk about that in a bit here. Let's get the other live chat up here so you guys can see what's going on here. The dip dance. Is there actually a dance that goes with that? I thought that was just a cringy 90s song. I don't know. Quest says, I avoid tobacco product, including dip. Nice. I gotta figure out what the dance is and how I would do that with a spawn. Anyway, let's get into our news for the day. We are going to start with the Dow, which has started down, and down considerably right now. So let's get that moved over here. Let's start going over this. So the Dow Jones Industrial Average with the futures on board dipped 753 points at open, now at 39,855.34, with our 52-week low being at 36,611.78. That was just about a year ago. So let's give a refresh on this, see if IBD has something on our futures right now on the front page. That might be a little bit of a difficult one here. The last IBD article I saw was all the way from last night. Yeah, this one's from an hour ago. Let's have a look. Open this one up here. Dow Jones dives 800 points after surprise inflation report. Nvidia and Tesla sell off. Why is this behind a paywall? Okay, maybe we're not going to be able to look at this one. I swear I'm prepared for all of this when I get started in the morning. try this one instead. There we go. Oh, this one's paywall too. Huh, IBD is paywall and everything all of a sudden. So, I guess we're going to stop using them as a source, but yeah, it does look like... Let's back this one back up here. We're at a dip right now. We'll see what happens with that and where this goes. I mean, cringy as it is, let's read from CNN instead. U.S. stocks tumble again as reality sets back in on Wall Street. From David Goldman, with extreme fear driving the U.S. market. The U.S. stock market, fresh off its third best day in modern history, is sinking back into reality. Although Trump paused most of his reciprocal tariffs, his other massive import taxes have already inflicted significant damage, and the economy won't easily recover from the fallout, which, unfortunately for a lot of people, the economy is not the stock market. The Dow, after rising nearly 3,000 points on Wednesday, opened lower by more than 670 points or 1.67% on Thursday. The S&P fell 2.1% and the Nasdaq was 2.7% lower. The S&P is coming off its best day since '08, and the Nasdaq on Wednesday posted its second best daily gains in history. Traders were elated that Trump temporarily rescinded his so-called reciprocal tariffs, which aren't really reciprocal because CNN has to put their own commentary into this one for 90 days. Those tariffs placed hefty levies between 11% and 50% on dozens of countries. Futures on Thursday had also responded somewhat positively to the European Union's announcement it would temporarily pause retaliatory tariffs on the U.S. in hopes of a negotiated trade agreement after Trump's U-turn. Trump and Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said more than 70 countries were lining up to negotiate. We will talk about this later on in the program. Deals with the United States to get out from under the tariffs, and the Trump admin wanted to provide some time to strike deals. But even after the about face, the reality remains. Economists said the economic damage is done. Partially because there are people in the markets that want to punish the administration for even suggesting this, and many predict a U.S. and global recession. Stocks are still well below where they were before Trump unveiled his Liberation Day tariffs last week, and those large market losses, existing tariffs, and high degree of uncertainty about American trade policy are enough to sink the economy, they say. Self-fulfilling prophecy, I think. Trump's universal 10% tariff that went into effect Saturday remains in place, as do 25% tariffs on auto imports, 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum, and 25% tariffs on some goods from Canada and Mexico. Trump also pledged to go forward with additional tariffs on pharmaceuticals, lumber, semiconductors, and copper. Goldman Sachs said Wednesday, after Trump's partial detente, that recession chances in the U.S. were still a coin flip. J.P. Morgan Wednesday evening said the bank would not alter its recession forecast, still seeing a 60% chance of U.S. and global recession, even after Trump's positive decision to unwind his draconian country-specific tariffs. And part of the issue that we have with this, and we saw this in 2022, when we hit the traditional definition of what a recession is, where our lovable old senile grandfather, Joe Biden, had 2 straight quarters of negative growth in the country, but we suddenly don't define that as a recession anymore. So the first question that we're going to have with that is, what is a recession? What's the definition right now? What are we going to call what a recession is? And at that point, I don't know. I really don't. Are we going to come to the point where we have 2 quarters of negative growth, and are they going to suddenly call that a recession again? I don't know. The language is going to change at some point, I think. But that is what we see coming from that, and where that goes. The rest of what we're going to talk about is going further down. Apparently LeBron James is now a Ken doll. Like, did Mrs. James... No, LeBron is deceased, isn't he? LeBron James. No, LeBron is still alive. Who was the one that passed away in the helicopter crash? With LeBron being a Ken doll now. Oh, okay, so he's actually a plastic Ken doll. It's not that his His wife caught him with another woman and went after him with a knife. But now he's smooth as a Ken doll. I don't know. Alright, let's keep going on this because we do still have a lot going on here. Alright, from yesterday, the Dow surges 2,900 points. The S&P posts biggest gain since '08 on tariff reversal. This is a live updater, so we're not going to spend too much time off of this. The stock market mounted one of its biggest rallies in history after Trump announced a pause on some of his reciprocal tariffs on a globe, causing a market that's been under extreme pressure for the past week to explode higher. The S&P skyrocketed 9.52% to settle at 54.5690 for the biggest one-day gain since '08. For the broad market index, it was the third biggest gain in post-World War II history. The Dow advanced 2,962.86 points, or 7.87%, to close at 40,608.45 for the biggest percentage advance since March of 2020. The Nasdaq jumped 12.16% to end at 17,124.97, reaching its largest one-day jump since January of '01 and the second best day ever. It is the best day ever, of course. You get to listen to Contemporary. It's the best day ever. About 30 billion shares traded hands, making it the heaviest volume day in Wall Street history, according to records that go back 18 years. I've authorized a 90-day pause and substantially lowered the reciprocal tariff during this period of 10%, also effective immediately, Trump posted on his Truth Social. Trump, in the same post, said he was raising the tariff on China. And it's making it the higher gain to 125%. So, the CEO of Walmart is probably crying right now. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent later clarified that all countries except China would return to the 10% baseline tariff rate, down from the higher rates that previously shocked the markets, as negotiations take place. The pause would not apply to sector tariffs, Bessent said. Stocks that were heavily pressured by the trade war tensions led the comeback Wednesday afternoon. Apple and Nvidia scored more than 15% on nearly 19% respectively. Walmart shares rallied around 9.6%. Tesla shares climbed more than 22% on the back of the pause announcement. Given how depressed stock prices and sentiment had become, the 90-day pause is sparking violent rebound, and delaying implementation certainly removes giant overhang from the market, said Adam Crisafulli, founder of the Vital Knowledge, but tariffs are not going away. China's tariff rate is now in the triple-digit territory, and who knows what happens in 90 days when this pause concludes. Prior to the announcement of the 90-day pause, investors were on edge over an escalating tit-for-tat between China and Trump. The EU had also approved its first set of tariffs in the U.S. set to start on April 15th. Nonetheless, stocks were trending higher in the afternoon. Traders were encouraged after Bessent said he would be taking a lead negotiating role in tariff talks. Trump also urged investors that now is a great time to buy. Which, I mean, for me, this is not official financial advice. I'm not going to... I'll leave this with the same disclaimer that I always do when I talk about finance. Whatever I say here is not official financial advice because I am not an investor. I do not know what your family's specific stock situation is, your specific financial situation is, what your household is, what you own in your house, etc. But I will say that stocks are on sale, so consult with your financial advisor who does know your position, where you're at, and what you can afford to spend, and see if now is the right time for you. Trump's pause declaration went out at 1:18 p.m. Eastern Time when the Dow was about 350 points higher for the day. Seconds later, the 30-stock index surged more than 2,000 points. In a press conference later that afternoon, Trump said investors' fears had gone overboard. That's Trump. I thought that people were jumping a little bit out of line. They were getting yippy. They were getting a little bit yippy, a little bit afraid. And this is one of the places that the term panicon came from. Or panican, is that what it is? I don't know. It's supposed to be a play on Republicans who didn't toe the Trump line, which, luckily, gladly, I am not in that camp. I am not a Republican, have not been, except for a brief experimentation period when I thought that there were only two choices in like 08 to 2010. Let's see. Anxiety around the rollout of the tariffs fueled a 4-day rout for stocks over the course of the previous 4 trading sessions. The Dow lost more than 4,500 points, while the S&P sustained a 12% fall. The Nasdaq was down more than 13% during that period. These losses were not seen since the Pinko-Pox pandemic. This allows for at least a near-term rally, but I would not assume that the bottom has been put in place, said Sam Stowell, Chief Investment Strategist at CFRA Research. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me 5 times, shame on me. Well, that's actually probably, if it's been 5 times, fair assessment, but I don't know that a lot of people have been really fooled 5 times at this point either. But that is where that goes from CNN again. Briefly, U.S. stocks skyrocket higher after Trump signals shift in trade policy from John Tofighi, David Goldman, and Anna Kuban. U.S. stocks skyrocketed higher after Trump announced he authorized a 90-day pause. Wall Street had been on edge, looking for any sign that Trump might shift his approach to his punitive tariffs. So when Trump posted on social media he authorized a pause on most reciprocal tariffs, investors were ready to dive in. The market's move is upward is so violent, and it speaks to how badly the market was looking for the clarity on the issue, said Chris Brigatti, Chief Investment Officer at SWBC, an investment firm in San Antonio, Texas. I believe that's one of the big ones that advertises on NASCAR, if I remember correctly. The positive shift was widespread. Nearly every single company in the S&P rose, according to data from FactSet. Amazon shot up almost 12%, 11.98%. Nike jumped up 11.36%. Meanwhile, United Airlines soared 26.14%. Delta surged 23.38%, and American Airlines surged 22.6%. Why were those ones dropping to begin with? I mean, they already have the airplanes, unless they couldn't afford the card stock with the tariffs to print your ticket. Like, the manufacturing ones and the sales one, like Amazon and Nike, I get that. I understand that one. But airlines, really? If anybody in the live chat, unless you're driving, because no texting and driving, can shine a light on why airlines were down and so far up again, I'm really confused by that one. On the Nasdaq, Apple surged 15.33%, Nvidia rose 18.72%, and Palantir Technologies gained 19%. Tesla surged 22.69%. The S&P is now up 12.86% from its nadir, I don't know what that word means, reached 2 days ago, but it's still down more than 3.7% from its close on April 2nd, right before Trump initially announced his reciprocal tariffs. The Nasdaq is still 2.7% down from its close on April 2nd. Before the upward swing, the S&P had been on the precipice of bear market territory, coming close to a stunningly rapid drop of 20% from the all-time high it hit just 7 weeks ago. On February 19th, the S&P closed down 11.2% from its record high in February. Following Trump's announcement, investors scooped up stocks and markets soared, yet uncertainty remains as Trump still escalated the trade war with China, raising its tariff rates from 125% from 104%. Additional universal duties of 10% remain on all U.S. imports alongside the targeted sectoral tariffs on autos. Wall Street breathed a sigh of relief as markets rallied, but investors are not necessarily in the clear. So that is what we have with that one. And we talked a bit about this last week, and I brought up some of the issues that go on with this. Now, as I've said before, and a lot of our tariff experts over on X, and probably on Facebook too, even though I don't go there, have all been saying at this point, the issue is the fact that we can go ahead and slap these tariffs on because a part of the reason for tariffing goods, and it's part of the reason that Europe does it, it's part of the reason that every other country in the world, especially manufacturing places like Japan and Taiwan and, well, Burma isn't doing a whole lot of anything because they have no idea what their government is even going to do right now. But like Thailand and India and places like that, part of the reason that they put tariffs on is to protect their own internal domestic manufacturing market, so that we can't make a better product, because, I mean, there's no way that we can make a cheaper product with the way that our labor structure is done, but we can make a better product and go sell it there and have people buy our quality product and put their manufacturing out of business for their own people. It's part of the reason that they tariff it, so it's not economically competitive with their own stuff. And a lot of people, myself included, hoped that when we started talking about doing this in this country, that it would lead to a manufacturing boom coming back into this country. The issue with that, of course, is, well, let's be realistic. In spite of the fact that I myself was raised in a manufacturing household, my dad factory worker for his entire career, there is still the, what's the word I'm looking for? There's still the stigma about going to high school and going and working in a factory after you're done. It's like, okay, do you really want to go through high school and go do the stupid job? It's like being a mechanic, honestly, too, and that's growing up. That's what I did, and then got to be a grown-up and went to school for it, but the stigma was there. Oh, the mechanics are the stupid people. They were the people that couldn't make it anywhere else. It's the same stigma that surrounds manufacture. Oh, you're going to go pull the lever, work in the factory. It's because you couldn't do anything else, because you're too stupid to do so. And prepare yourself, by the way, because in spite of the fact that that was a very honorable career and it lifted a lot of the middle class and the upper middle class before a lot of the jobs started getting shipped back out overseas, the stigma is going to come, and it's going to come in full force. Oh, why don't you want to work in finance? Why don't you want to be a banker? Are you too stupid for any of that? But anyway, the reason that I was going into that and talking about stigma in manufacture is because we're in a situation, again, where, yes, we want to get the manufacturer here because we want to have the jobs here. And Pam and I were just talking about this 2 days ago. We were going through town looking at an older factory that's now converted into office buildings, because that's what happened to a lot of the older factories. They're either sitting completely vacant with all the tooling either robbed for copper, missing entirely, or sold off and converted into being an apartment building, an office building, gym and workout space, shopping center, places like that. The factories, the buildings are there, the shells are there, but they're not currently usable, and it's going to take 1 to 2 years minimum before we start to get to a point where some of the stuff can be utilized and used again to have this manufacture. And it's going to suck if we have to put these on there. Pay the 25% extra on, we'll use auto parts for as the example and cars for the example, to pay the 25% extra to go. But the unfortunate part of that is we can either continue to go business as usual, continue to ship jobs to Turkey, India, China, places like that, and not even making an attempt to bring these jobs back to the US, or we sit and suffer for a couple years while we come back and retool these buildings. You can't snap your finger and have a factory back up and running again. This is not a Tommy Boy movie. Alright, I'm going to go briefly through this one because this is going to be just a lot of heavy stuff. This is the full list here of the tariff recipients. This will be, I don't remember if I put this one in the Discord or not, but I will go back and put it in there because as of Tuesday, this is the list of all the tariffs. Now, I know that this is an outdated list because China is no longer at 84%. Now they're higher. Of what the reciprocal tariffs are. So let's read briefly from CBS News, and then I'll go back and post this up in the Discord for you guys. A global trade war is brewing as the U.S. imposes tariffs on a growing list of countries, heightening concerns about economic growth and roiling markets around the world. Trump on April 2nd announced so-called reciprocal tariffs on imports from about 90 nations that are above a 10% across-the-board tax applied to all imports to the U.S., describing the announcement as Liberation Day. The president said the new taxes are needed to erase a trade deficit between the U.S. and other countries, ranging from China to the European Union. Some nations are facing only the universal tariff of 10%, while imports from dozens of other countries are charged a higher specific reciprocal tariff import levy. For instance, Australian imports face the baseline rate of 10%, while China-made products are now paying an import duty that has jumped to 104%, now 125%, on reciprocal tariffs combined with previously announced duties of 20% after slapping its own tariffs on U.S. imports, in addition to the ones that were, of course, already there. Reciprocal, that means that they do it to us, we do it to them, Mr. Trump said in his April 2nd remark. However, on April 9th, Mr. Trump backed away from parts of his plan, announcing a 90-day pause on the reciprocal tariffs and lowering the tariff rate to 10% for almost all nations. This notable exception was China, with Trump saying that he's instead raising the tariff rate on the country's imports to 125%. And as talked about in the first article, the very first one we read from CNN, the CEO of Walmart is probably crying because, to use the words of the orange moron himself, most of the stuff on their shelves comes from China. Okay. Based on the lack of respect that China has shown to the world's markets, I'm hereby raising the tariff charge to China by the United States to 125%, effective immediately, Mr. Trump wrote on Truth Social. Stock soared after Trump's April 9th announcement, with the S&P gaining 8.4% in the afternoon, trading and the Dow averaging or surging still 7%. Still, some on Wall Street caution that the pause is still on track to end in 90 days, which could signal more volatility ahead. With, I think, the hope behind that being that we actually have some negotiation beforehand, but, well, none of us have a crystal ball, so we can't predict that either. Before he announced the pause, Asian nations were set to face the worst of the brunt, with Cambodia facing a tax rate of 49%. What? Do we have manufacturing in Cambodia? Really? Didn't know that. And Vietnam, that one I knew, at 46%, according to the nationwide chief economist Kathy Bostianchik. Mr. Trump also said such levies will boost domestic manufacturing and level the playing field with other countries that impose higher tariffs on the U.S. than the U.S. charges for their products. Still, economists are forecasting tariffs will cause inflation to reignite, while also prompting some trade partners to retaliate with higher tariffs on American imports in their nations. So, let me go ahead and, as promised, drop this into the Discord for you guys so you can see the full reciprocal list. Oh, we still have some, got some motion going on in there. Alright, let's drop this here for you guys. And let's keep going. Lengthy thread, which thank you to Putz for putting this out as the thread reader in one specific page. I will keep the thread up here. Some talk about what's going on with this. Tanvi Ratna X's out Trump's new tariffs are in a trade tweak. They're the first move in a full spectrum reset. So this is some of the conspiracy theory that's going on behind what actually could be done, or what the actual intention is behind the tariffs. Because, well, like I had said, for most people in most middle America, we think that, oh, this will bring the jobs back, this will bring our factories back and whatnot. Well, there are other people out here who are suggesting that the actual reason for this is because it's going to let us go back and refinance the debt and change the bond yield market. I don't know if that's the case, but let's read a little bit of this. They're in a trade tweak. They're the first move in a full spectrum reset. $9.2 trillion in debt matures in 2025. Inflation lingers. Alliances are shifting. One announcement just set a dozen wheels in motion. Here's what's really happening and why it matters. Start with the debt. $9.2 trillion must be refinanced in 2025. If rolled into a 10-year bond, every 1 basis point in drop saves approximately $1 billion a year. So a 0.5% drop would save $500 billion over a decade. Lower yields free up fiscal room. Without them, core spending gets crowded out. How to push yields down with sticky inflation and a cautious Fed. Manufacturer uncertainty. Sweep in with tariffs, spook the markets, trigger risk off. Money exits stocks, floods into long-term treasuries. A deliberate detox to cool the economy and cut refinancing costs. But cheap refinancing isn't enough on its own, even at lower rates. The debt remains enormous. That's where the next level comes in, cutting the deficit. Elon Musk and Doge, of course, trying to cut down on the deficit. Now, I always found it funny because in the last term, a lot of people praised Biden for cutting the deficit to the level that he did. He cut $2.5 trillion off the deficit. But that was after he blew it out. $7.2 trillion. With these savings, the big economic pillars to successfully deliver on Besant's 333 plan is to get growth up. Tariffs come in as a trigger for domestic industrial revival. The thinking is by making imports expensive, you create room for U.S. producers to step in. The problem, of course, American factories can't scale up overnight, which I mentioned a couple articles ago. So in the short term, consumers will face higher prices. The admin knows this. That's why they're front-loading the pain now, betting that by 26 the benefits will be visible. In the meantime, they're offering some near-term relief. Tax cuts have already been floated to help offset the cost burden on households. Always a good thing, of course. Although, we all know from spending our time on social media that all tax cuts, no matter who gets them, are tax cuts for billionaires. You could literally set a tax cut law up that says anybody making over $700,000 gets a 75% tax increase, while anybody making under $100,000 gets a 75% tax decrease. And it would still be called tax cuts for the billionaires. And while risky, the currency devaluation may follow later to make imports cheaper without lifting tariffs. So, the full thread is available in articles worth investigating over in the Discord if you want to go back and check all of that out. But yeah, a big one that we're talking about right now is trying to get the bond yield rates down to refinance the debt. Speaking of tariffs and a flip-flop on this, somebody dug back 20 years, reminding you, of course, that Pelosi has been in office for 20 years, to hear Nancy Pelosi in 1996 speaking on tariffs and the trade deficit with China. Let's listen.
How far does China have to go? How much more repression? How big a trade deficit and loss of jobs for the American worker? And how much more dangerous proliferation has to exist before members of this House of Representatives will say, I will not endorse the status quo? As I mentioned, it's about jobs, proliferation, and human rights. And there are those who say we shouldn't link human rights and trade and proliferation and trade. I disagree. But if we just want to take up this issue on the basis of economics alone, indeed, China should not receive most favored nation status for several reasons that I'd like to go into now. I'd like to call the attention of our colleagues to this chart on the status quo that the business community is asking each and every one of you, each and every one of us, to endorse today. Right now, we have a $34 billion trade deficit with China, the 1995 figure. It will be over $40 billion for 1996. Since the Tiananmen Square massacre, this figure has increased 1,000%, from $3.5 billion then to about $34 billion now. In terms of tariffs, I think it's interesting to note that the average U.S. MFN tariff on Chinese goods coming into the United States is 2%, whereas the average Chinese MFN tariff on U.S. goods going into China is 35%. Is that reciprocal? On exports, China only allows certain industries into China, of U.S. Industries into China, and therefore only 2% of U.S. exports are allowed into China. On the other hand, the U.S. allows China to flood our markets with a third of their exports, and that'll probably go over 40%. And it's limitless because we have not placed any restriction. In terms of jobs, this is the biggest and cruelest hoax of all. Not only do we not have market access, not only do they have prohibitive tariffs, not only are our exports not let in very specifically, but China benefits with at least 10 million jobs from U.S.-China trade. The president, in his statement, requesting this special waiver, said that China trade supports 170,000 jobs in the United States, 170,000 jobs, whereas our imports from China support 10 million jobs at least. Fact is that U.S.-China trade is a job loser. And
boy, that's almost fascistic and almost Republican in nature, doesn't it? It's hard to believe. Looking at her now too. That woman is in her 60s at the time that this video was taken. And there have been many other such recordings. I'm only just going to use that one, but I know that we've seen stuff from Schumer about this. I'm sure that there's stuff from Sanders about this. Central planned economy, that seems like that'd be right up Sanders' alley too. So, but yeah. And a lot of the people that are speaking out against this were speaking out for this years and years and years ago, when it was a more Democrat and more worker-centric position to be for the tariffs. And all the Republicans wanted to ship all the jobs back up overseas. Still remember that. Growing up, I was told that I had to, without any question whatsoever, vote only Democrat all the time, because if any Republican ever got into office, ever, they would ship my dad's job overseas. My dad's job went to Turkey under Biden. So, that is that. Let's keep going. Put some music back on. From Axios. Inside the Oval, 3 reasons Trump buckled on tariffs. And that's the new narrative, is that he buckled. He saw his popularity going down, and he folded like a cheap folding chair. From Mark Caputo. Trump's boosters hailed his decision to pause tariffs for countries around the world as a strategic masterstroke, but few are buying the spin. Trump buckled under tremendous moaning by the minute pressure from CEOs, friends, GOP senators, the markets, and bond prices. Trump himself admits he blinked when people were getting a little queasy about the bond market. I've been following this since 2012, including when he started to come onto the scene in 2015. Even if he himself believes in his heart of hearts that he blinked, that's not the kind of thing that he would say out loud. Inside the White House, the episode highlighted the roles of Bessent and Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick as they animated Trump's risky game with trade. Both men were advising Trump in the Oval Office when he decided to post a message on Truth Social announcing the tariff pause for 90 days, while the admin negotiated with as many as 75 countries. The move was based on 3 factors, according to 3 sources familiar with the meeting. Unnamed, of course, because they're always unnamed. If we name our sources, then we won't be able to hide behind how uncredible they are. Besson and Lutnick told Trump their phones were burning up with countries calling to negotiate. One source described the message from the two as, "We've got all these great countries. They all want to come and talk. How do we do it?" The president and his advisors also agreed that China's decision to raise tariffs on the U.S. created an opportunity for Trump to pause the tariff hikes on other countries as a token of friendship. It would be an effort to put a ring around China and isolate them, an admin official said. After several days, which Trump steadfastly said the falling stock market didn't bother him, the market's continued slide, emerging problems in the bond market, and the falling value of the dollar became impossible to ignore. Friendly world leaders, congressional allies, major donors, and CEOs were practically begging for a pause, another official said. So, whether or not this actually happened, I don't know. Like I said, he might even himself say to himself, "Okay, I was wrong about this," but he wouldn't say it out loud. Alright, from the Daily Wire. Market surges after Trump hits back at China, pauses other Liberation Day tariffs. The American stock market quickly rebounded on Wednesday after Trump announced that he was pausing his reciprocal Liberation tariffs on all countries except China. Based on the fact that more than 75 countries have called representatives of the U.S., including the Department of Commerce, Treasury, and USTR, to negotiate a solution to the subjects being discussed relative to trade barriers, tariffs, currency manipulation, and non-monetary tariffs, and that these countries have not, in my strong suggestion, retaliated in any way, shape, or form against the U.S., I've authorized a 90-day pause and a substantially lowered reciprocal tariff during this period of 10%, also effective immediately, Trump said. Thank you for your attention in this manner. The announcement came hours after Trump posted on Truth Social that this is a great time to buy and be cool. Everything's going to work out well. The U.S. will be bigger and better than ever before. So, markets are up. Wonder where they're at right now. We should probably keep tracking that. I probably shouldn't have closed my Dow Jones tab. Let's bring that one back up real quick. Still going down, actually, but not to the rate that it was before. Let's keep that parked over here. 42.9 points down. Did not watch the interview, unfortunately, but Besson was on NBC, Meet the Depressed, today, and he said there's no need to worry about a recession. He also teased the tax cuts would come sooner than expected. Job numbers are strong, and with tax cuts coming, he doesn't see a recession on the horizon. So, apparently he was there. But he did also say now almost 70 countries have asked to negotiate. From Daniel Chayton, just briefly on this one. Secretary of Treasury Scott Besson, almost 70 countries have now approached us wanting to help rebalance global trade. On behalf of the President, I'm glad to join U.S. Trade Rep to open talks with Japan as we work to enact the President's vision for a new golden age of global trade. Let's listen.
Larry, I can tell you that there are 50, 60, maybe almost 70 countries now who have approached us. So it's going to be a busy April, May, maybe into June. And Japan is a very important military ally. They're a very important economic ally. And the U.S. has a lot of history with them. So I would expect that Japan's going to get priority, just because they came forward very quickly, but it's going to be very busy. And if President Trump, again, gave himself maximum negotiating leverage, and just when he achieved the maximum leverage, he's willing to start talking.
So, we'll see what the talks bring out. China reaches out to others as Trump layers on more tariffs. from Christopher Bodine over at the Associated Press. China is reaching out to other nations as the U.S. layers on more tariffs on what appears to be an attempt to form a united front to compel Washington to retreat. Days into the effort, it's meeting only partial success with many other countries unwilling to ally with the main target of Trump's trade war. Which, and realistically, we can talk about opening our car market back up to Europe at this point, which, while you're not going to see a lot of Chevrolet, Ford, Chrysler over there, Tesla is still one of the best-selling vehicles in the European Union based on their rather strict, not strict, carbon rules. We can talk about going on a steel trade with Japan and an aluminum trade with Japan, but the big reason we're doing a lot of this goes back to 2016, 2017 in the first term, and the massive trade deficit that we have with the worst country in the world, China. So yes, the Associated Press is astute in this one. Facing cratering of global markets, Trump on Wednesday backed off his tariffs on most nations for 90 days, saying countries were lining up to negotiate for more favorable conditions. We know that. China has refused to seek talks, saying it would fight to the end in a tariff war, prompting Trump to further jack up the tax rate on Chinese imports to 125%. China has retaliated with a tariff on U.S. goods of 84%, which took effect on Thursday, which is going to lead to a lot of hungry Chinese people. Trump's move was seemingly an attempt to narrow what had been an unprecedented trade war between the U.S. and most of the world to a showdown between the U.S. and China. A just cause received support from many. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Lin Jian said at a daily briefing on Thursday, the U.S. cannot win the support of all the people and will end in failure. China has thus far focused on Europe with a phone call between Premier Li Qiang and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, sending positive messages to the outside world. China is willing to work with the EU to jointly implement the important consensus, reaching the leaders of China and the EU, strengthen communication and exchanges, and deepen China-EU trade, investment, and industrial cooperation, the official Xinhua news agency reported. Keep in mind, of course, again, that Xinhua is literal state propaganda. It's a news outlet that's owned by the government agency. That's not me coming out and mocking them. That's actually what they are. That was followed by a video conference between Chinese Commerce Minister Wang Wentao and EU Commissioner for Trade and Economic Security Sefcovic. I have no idea how to pronounce that name, especially with the little U-shaped stuff over the top of consonants. Maybe I got it right. I have no idea. To discuss the U.S. reciprocal tariffs. Wang said the tariffs seriously infringe on the legitimate interests of all countries, seriously violate the WTO rules, seriously damage the rules-based multilateral trading system, and seriously impact the stability of global economic order. Seriously? Xinhua said. It's a typical act of unilateralism, protectionism, and economic bullying. Wang is quoted as saying, in the midst of his country having unilateralism, protectionism, and economic bullying. Of course. China is willing to resolve differences through consultation and negotiation, but if the U.S. insists on its own way, China will fight to the end, Wang said. So, get your popcorn ready, because this is going to be an interesting one, I predict. So we'll see where that goes. Where's my cursor? There it is. Kevin O'Leary says Trump should be is actually going easy on China right now. That the tariff should be 400%. From Virginia Kruta. Forget the article, let's just listen.
But Kevin, he said there's a lot of deals that they're literally kissing his ass, was the phrase he used, very, very eloquently. Where are the deals?
104% tariffs on China are not enough. I'm advocating 400%. I do business in China. They don't play by the rules. They've been in the WTO for decades. They have never abided by any of the rules they agreed to when they came in for decades. They cheat, they steal IP. I can't litigate in their courts. They take product, technology, they steal it, they manufacture it, sell it back here. Never has an administration.
400% tariffs? What would that
I
look
want
like?
Xi on an airplane to Washington to level the playing field. This is not about tariffs anymore. Nobody has taken on China yet, not the Europeans, no administration for decades. As someone who actually does business there, I've had enough. I speak for millions of Americans who have IP that has been stolen by the Chinese. I have nothing against the Chinese people. They brought great literacy, art, and tech to the world. The government cheats and steals, and finally, an administration, you may not like Trump, you may not like his style or his rhetoric, finally, an administration that puts up and says enough. 400% tariffs tomorrow morning. He'll tell you why. Xi can only stay the supreme leader if people are employed. If we wipe out any business there, because we are still 39% of all consumables on Earth and 25% of the world's GDP, America is the #1 economy on Earth with all the cards. We will not have that forever. It's time to squeeze Chinese heads into the wall now.
Well, after that graphic and colorful imagery, of course, now we sit and look at and say, what do 400% Chinese tariffs look like? Of course, quintupling the price of most goods that you would buy on eBay, Amazon, etc. So, I don't know that we're ready to jump that far just quite yet, but we will see what happens with that. Let's grab one from the Associated Press again. Trump hits back with a 125% tariff and escalating trade war with China, just briefly, based on, again, the fact that we've talked about this previously. From Weizhong Wu. Trump raised tariffs on Chinese imports to 125% on Wednesday, hours after China boosted the duty on American goods to 84%, in an escalating battle that threatens to disrupt trade between the world's two largest economies. Citing a lack of respect, Trump set China apart from other countries. He said in a social media post that he's pausing his so-called reciprocals on many other trading partners because they had responded by reaching out for talks rather than retaliating. The tit-for-tat hikes between the US and China are the latest in an ongoing trade war that threatens to raise prices for consumers in America and derail China's attempts to reinvigorate its sluggish economy. The response from the Chinese government signals its determination not to bend to Trump's pressure despite the risks. If the U.S. insists on further escalating its economic and trade restrictions, China has the firm will and abundant means. I don't know that I would go with saying that you have the abundant means. You do have means. There are ways that you can get around this. I would not call them abundant at this point. To take necessary countermeasures and fight to the end, China's Ministry of Commerce said before announcing the latest tariff hike. So, just curious on this one, I do wonder what would happen if, and I know that I'm a Clancy fan, I know there are other Clancy fans in here, and while I've never finished the book itself, I know the base premise behind the Tom Clancy book, The Bear and the Dragon, is that with an escalating trade war at the time, this was back in the 90s, China and Russia moved in so China could get into Russia's resources, but if China were to make an incursion into Russia to grab hold of the Siberian area and the oil that's there, and whose side the American left would take at this point, because, I mean, Putin man bad, of course. I don't know. That would also get interesting. In Washington, White House Press Secretary Bubbleheaded Bleach Blonde said, "When you punch at the U.S., President Trump is going to punch back further." So, that is where we have with that. Let's grab a pair back from Newsweek. First one, exercising what I had said before about China having means, just not great means at this point. Yuan sinks to 17-year low as Trump excludes China from tariffs pause. From Shane Croucher. The yuan dipped to a 17-year low against the US dollar early on Thursday after Trump excluded Beijing from his 90-day pause on reciprocal tariffs and cranked up his tariff on Chinese imports to 125%. Why it matters: the Chinese economy is heavily reliant on exports, so a weaker yuan could help cushion the impact of Trump's tariff hike by making Chinese goods more competitive outside the US market. However, with imports also playing a significant role in China's economy, which is already slowing down, the depreciating currency could drive up prices for foreign goods, adding pressure to domestic consumers and manufacturers alike. The dollar strengthened sharply after Trump announced his pause, which sent stock markets surging again after deep losses in recent days over fears his tariffs would lead to a trade war that triggers a recession in the US and elsewhere. Aromatic Desperado wants to sell me cheap viewers. It's not first time chat, it's possible ban evader this time. Let's load that back up here. Maybe because I have bandwidth open so far in other places, it's not going to open up his profile here. If somebody wants to give Mr. Aromatic Desperado XO2 a little bit of a timeout to think about what he said, you don't have to ban him, just give him a little timeout. I think he'll come around. Alright. Trump said China would not be included because of the lack of respect that China has shown to the world markets, and that his tariff hike on Chinese goods was effective immediately. At some point, hopefully in the near future, China will realize that the days of ripping off the US and other countries is no longer as sustainable or acceptable, Trump posted on his Truth Social platform on Wednesday. World Bank data shows China imported $3.1 trillion in goods and services in 23, accounting for around 17.5% of its GDP. Trump is turning the screw on Beijing. He could use the trade negotiations with others to apply even more pressure if he makes dropping U.S. tariffs conditional on America's trading partners curbing their dealings with China. The tariff hike rattled markets and spurred immediate retaliation from Beijing. Financial indices around the globe swung sharply, with U.S. markets rebounding in recent days on hopes that easing tensions with non-China trading partners could offer some stability. I mean, the only thing that I am hopeful for at this point is that while we have great price hikes going on here, we don't get a price hike at the Peking Garden, because that would suck. I don't want to pay 125% more for my garlic shrimp, you see. I haven't had garlic shrimp in a while. I should get some of that. Alright, some polling news, as long as we're talking about this one here, from Newsweek. Donald Trump's polling hits after Liberation Day is disastrous for Republicans. Just disastrous. Wes Fanning weighing in on the tariffs conversation. It's proper to treat China differently than other countries for two reasons. One, they regularly cheat when it comes to international trade, and two, they are a much bigger and much more export-dependent economy than most. It's the communist part, and while yes, imports make up 17% of their GDP, as was mentioned in the previous article, the goal of communism even in a mixed model like China, is to be entirely export and no import. They have a ways to go with that, of course, especially on food. But that is the end goal for communism. Alright, from James Bickerton. A majority of American adults are deeply skeptical about Trump's new tariff policy, according to a new YouGov survey, with more than half of those polled saying they regard the policy as the largest peacetime tax hike in U.S. history. You're also using YouGov. Keep that in mind. Let's just look at the polling, I guess. Because you can make one poll say whatever it is that you want. When we aggregate them, that's what we know. Trump job approval. Disapprove plus 5%. Let's look at the aggregate though. So the spread is still down 3.2% at this point. Harris X 47 to 49, Quinnipiac 41 to 53. Doesn't look like, okay, the last one that we got that's positive is Daily Mail. This is ending at Liberation Day, also of 1,000 registered voters. I don't see the YouGov one on here, but that's partially because, well, they're typically outliers enough. But there's not a lot of positive right now. The Reuters Ipsos, which I would also call an unreliable poll at this point because it's 1,486 adults with absolutely no indicator of whether or not they would vote or if they're registered to vote or anything else, just 1,486 people off the street. I typically discount the ones that just say A for adult, even though Real Clear Politics puts them on here. The most effective ones I see are the RV, the registered voters ones, because they're people who have actually gone out registered to vote and are active in what they're going to do. But we do have approval rating shift going towards the negative at this point. Let's go back here. On Wednesday, April 2nd, which Trump dubbed Liberation Day, the president announced extensive new tariffs, which credit ratings agency Fitch said will take them to their highest level since 1910. Trump imposed a baseline 10% levy on all imports with what he called discount reciprocal tariffs on dozens of countries, including 34% levy on China, 25% on South Korea, and 20% on the EU. This was on top of tariffs Trump announced on China, Mexico, and Canada earlier in his presidency. And on Monday, the president said the levy on Beijing would rise by an additional 50% in response to Chinese counter tariffs. And of course, they went even higher than that. YouGov surveyed 1,139 adults, not likely registered voters again, between April 3rd and April 6th with 4% margin of error. The poll found 51% of Americans agree the tariffs are the largest peacetime tax hike in U.S. history, split between 30% who say they strongly agree and 21% who somewhat agree. By contrast, only 20% said they disagreed either strongly or somewhat, with the remainder unsure. In addition, 51% of Americans said they backed the statement that Republicans are crashing the American economy in real time and driving us into a recession. This is not Liberation Day, it's Recession Day. Of those, 37% said they strongly agree, with 14% said they somewhat agree, against 20% who answered strongly disagree, and 10% who somewhat disagree. So, again, it's one poll. You can make a poll, say whatever it is that you want, depending on where you poll from. Banning says Brazil's economic growth has been predominantly domestic market based, but they're still protectionist. They want car companies to build there for the domestic car market rather than imported. Does Brazil have a domestic car company? I was unaware of that. Which car company comes out of Brazil? Can you buy one here? Some reaction to the tariffs. Fort Wayne GM plant announces increase in production, plans to hire temporary employees. Well, make some of those people permanent. Why don't you? From Marin Murphy over at WANE.com out of Fort Wayne, Indiana. GM said the Fort Wayne plant will increase production with hopes to hire around 225 temporary employees in an announcement on Thursday. According to an article from Reuters, the GM Fort Wayne assembly plant just announced in a webcast to employees that it would increase production of light-duty trucks. The announcement comes after Stellantis announced it would be temporarily halting production at a plant in Canada and a plant in Mexico shortly after Trump announced the 25% tariff on imported vehicles. The move will result in a temporary layoff of 900 U.S. employees, including some in Indiana. Why would it lay off 900 people in the U.S. to close plants in Mexico and Canada? I'm a little confused by that one. I think it would be thrilling, and I still know people in the area because I lived there for a good 10 years, but I think it'd actually be kind of thrilling to see Belvedere open back up. The Belvedere Stellantis plant. Because they just closed that, last year? So I would say 2 years ago. Yeah, 2 years ago they closed that one. So a lot of the tooling is probably still there. I think that'd be incredible. According to Reuters article, because of the increase in production, 225 to 250 temporary positions will be added to support current manufacturing business needs. GM Senior Director of News Relations, Kevin Kelly, told Wayne 15 GM will be making operational adjustments at Fort Wayne, including hiring temporary employees to support current manufacturing and business needs. We continuously update and revise production schedules as part of our standard process of evaluating and aligning to manage vehicle inventory. Senator Jim Banks said in response to the increase of truck production, "Today's announcement from GM is great news for Hoosiers. It hasn't even been 24 hours and Trump's plan is already delivering for working families in Indiana in a big way." In February 25, GM hired 100 temporary workers. So, there are a bunch of jobs, and hopefully the majority, if not all, translate into permanent jobs. Reuters with the same article. Let's skip that one. And the only reason we'll go into the New York Post article with the same information is because Nissan is also doing domestic truck production as well at this point. From Ariel Zilber, GM and Nissan are both planning to boost production at their U.S. based plants, while Chrysler parent Stellantis plans to roll out bigger discounts in response to Trump's reciprocal tariffs. Okay, now I want to hear what Stellantis is going to do. GM said it was adjusting its manufacturing strategy by shifting more production of its popular light-duty trucks to Fort Wayne, following Trump's imposition of a 25% tariff on imported vehicles and auto parts. GM CEO Mary Barra hinted at the shift during an earnings call earlier this year, emphasized the company's capacity to adapt. "We have the capacity in the U.S. to shift some of that," Barra stated, indicating that domestic production could help the automaker sidestep significant tariff-related costs. Again, part of the goals of all of this. Currently, GM assembles its Silverado and Sierra trucks across facilities in the U.S., Canada, and Mexico. But the Detroit-based automaker will now have to concentrate production domestically in order to maintain competitive pricing amid higher tariffs. GM's decision to bolster production at Fort Wayne will result in creating between 225 to 250 new jobs, according to a letter that was sent by the UAW chairman Rich Letourneau to employees. Let's see, what else do we have here? Meanwhile, Nissan opted to maintain 2 production shifts at Smyrna, Tennessee plant, reversing an earlier decision to scale down to 1 shift. The Japanese automaker cited the need to bolster domestic output amid tariffs affecting imported vehicles from Mexico and Japan. Stellantis, which also owns Jeep and Ram, is launching a new sales initiative that extends employee-level pricing to all U.S. consumers on most of its vehicle lineup, according to Wall Street Journal. Now, I read somewhere, and I haven't confirmed that one, that Ford is doing the same thing currently, although having formerly been a Ford employee, at least if you're on D plan, that doesn't translate into enough to, in this economy, go out and buy a brand new F-150. Have you seen the prices on those things? It's about 11%. Beginning Friday, buyers will be able to purchase top-selling models such as the Wrangler and Ram 1500 at substantial discounts, according to an internal memo reviewed by the Journal. Customers may also choose from existing promotional offers running through April, the memo noted. Stellantis, which on Thursday announced it would shutter plants in Canada and Mexico, is expecting to formally present the program to its U.S. dealerships during a scheduled briefing Friday morning. So they're trying to increase the demand. So we'll see what happens with that. Let's check in on the markets real quick. Refresh. A little bit of a bounce. Still down about 2.25%. All right, apparently Ben Shapiro went full R word. Per R word finder over on X. I know on X we can say that word again. I still choose not to. But I know we can't say it on YouTube. That's a naughty word on that site.
Yesterday, Israel announced 0 tariffs on any American goods. The Trump administration hit them with a 17% tariff anyway, claiming that they had a 33% tariff rate on American goods, which clearly is not true. Why? Because it turns out that we buy more stuff from the Israelis than the Israelis buy from us. Shocker. They're a smaller country. We're a giant market. Not a giant shock, as it turns out. So this is pretty crazy. I have friends, for example, who import product to the United States and then sell them. Why? Because they can't get the product in the United States. So, for example, I have a friend who's in the jewelry business. And this friend in the jewelry business imports products that are not capable of being manufactured or found in the United States from abroad. So it's not like there's import substitution you can just buy from an American. That's not how it works. By the way, this company is an American company. The tariff that is now being applied to all of his imports is like 35, 40%. Those prices will get passed directly on to the consumers if consumption goes down, if investment goes down, because investors are freaked out because they're getting whipsawed like nobody's business. Again, I was talking with investors pretty much all day yesterday, given what was going on. And the number one thing that I was hearing from major investors is, I don't know what the hell is going on. That was the number one thing. Before and after. The amount of confusion, chaos in the markets, a feeling of complete dyspeptic ulcer-ridden kind of churn, that is very real, and that is not good for markets.
And it does. Indeed, it does. Realistically, it's hard to come because, yes, there are certain things that you can't get in this country. Tequila. If you make it in this country, it is simply a agave liqueur. It is not actually tequila unless it's made in a certain region of Mexico. Champagne is the same thing. Now, I can get champagne yeast and actually make a champagne in my kitchen. Yes, that's legal, government. Fermenting is legal. I know you're still on the fence about whether or not we're going to keep distilling in its legal status or not, but fermenting is legal. So I could go back and get a champagne yeast and get the proper grapes and make a champagne in my kitchen, but it wouldn't be a champagne because it didn't come from the Champagne region of France. All right. Did I? Did I archive this? I did. That's why that one's still up there, because I put it up with the archive. Okay, on the other Asian front, Taiwan says Trump tariffs pause gives breathing room for more detailed talks. From Ben Blanchard and Faith Hung. U.S. President Trump's 90-day pause on most tariffs gives breathing space for more in-depth talks, and Taiwan hopes to take advantage of the huge U.S. market for more balanced trade. The island's foreign minister said on Thursday that, of course, is the proper Chinese government. With the mainland of China, of course, being West Taiwan. In a stunning reversal, Trump said he would temporarily lower the hefty duties he had just imposed on dozens of countries, while further ramping up pressure on China, pushing global stocks higher. Taiwan had been due to be hit with a 32% tariff, setting its stock market plummeting, though the key semiconductor industry was excluded. Speaking to reporters at Parliament, Taiwan Foreign Minister Lin Chia-lung said the government was dedicated to increasing its purchases from and investments in the U.S. to reduce the island's trade surplus with its most important international backer. Now that we have an additional 90 days, we can discuss Taiwan-U.S. economic and trade cooperation in a more detailed and in-depth manner, he said. We hope to take advantage of the huge U.S. market, their excellent technology capital, and talent to form a Taiwan-U.S. coalition, a joint fleet approach, he added. The U.S. has received Taiwan's trade proposals and has also responded, Lin said, without giving details. So, well, we could be shipping some more manufacturing over there or getting access to some of their products that, again, are not made here. Grab one more from the wire. Trump revives possible sale of U.S. steel to Japan's Nippon Steel. From Tim Pierce. Trump has ordered a new review of the possible sale of U.S. steel to Japan's Nippon Steel, a deal previously blocked by former President Biden. Trump signed an executive action on Monday ordering his admin to take a new look at the deal and assess the risks the deal may pose to the U.S. and national security after the U.S. Steel and Nippon Steel offered some changes to the deal. Trump's order gives the U.S. Committee on Foreign Investment 45 days to submit a recommendation. I direct the Committee on Foreign Investments in the U.S. to conduct a review of the acquisition of U.S. steel by the purchasers to assist me in determining whether further action in this matter may be appropriate. Biden blocked the proposed $14.9 billion deal in January, citing risk to the U.S. supply chains. Trump also opposed the deal at the time and pledged to block it. I'm totally against the once great and powerful U.S. steel being bought by a foreign company, in this case, Nippon Steel of Japan, Trump wrote on Truth Social in December. Through a series of tax incentives and tariffs, we will make the U.S. steel strong and great again, and it will happen fast. As president, I will block the deal from happening. Buyer beware, he said. Trump's order to reopen discussions on the sale of U.S. steel comes after the president spoke with PM Shigeru Shiba in a Monday morning phone call over tariffs. The call between the two leaders took place as dozens of countries are attempting to negotiate with the White House to avoid a wide-ranging tariffs announced by the U.S. last week. So one of the big ideas with this, of course, is Japan wanting to come back in and get the acquisition of U.S. steel so they can avoid the duty on sending steel over to the U.S. because it would be made in the U.S. at this point. So I don't like this one myself. I do think that U.S. steel should stay in U.S. hands. We will see what happens with that. All right. We are just about done with the economic side of this one here. Looking at the oil prices right now. From Leading Report, breaking oil prices are at the lowest level since 2021. So, let's see why. And how we can spin this into something terrible, of course. Goldman Sachs warns that oil could crash under $40 in an extreme scenario from Wellington. Oil prices could slump to under $40 a barrel in the worst case scenario, Goldman Sachs analysts wrote in a Monday note referring to Brent oil, the international benchmark, which would be approximately 118 in fuel once everything all settles and the chips all fall. Brent futures are around $64 a barrel, and U.S. West Texas Intermediate, the U.S. benchmark, which typically trades at a discount to Brent, are around $60 a barrel. Reminder, when we were seeing $4 and $5 per gallon for gasoline, Brent crude was at $120 a barrel. Prices of both grades are around 50% lower so far this year. Goldman Sachs' current base case outlook pegs Brent at $55 and WTI at $51 a barrel by December 26. This assumes the U.S. avoids a recession and OPEC supply rises moderately. However, in a more extreme and less likely scenario, with both global GDP slowdown and a full unwind of OPEC plus cuts, which would discipline non-OPEC supply, we estimate that Brent would fall just under $40 a barrel in late 2026. The last time Brent was trading below $40 a barrel was early 2020. In the case of a typical U.S. recession, the investment bank forecast Brent at $58 a barrel in December 25 and $50 in 26. Oil prices are sensitive to macroeconomic changes since energy is a key input for all industries. Goldman Sachs' under $40 forecast came after oil prices tanked over 7% on Thursday following President Trump's latest round of tariffs and OPEC's surprise decision to increase supply. They extended declines to 4-year lows on Monday. So, what is that going to do for gas? We will continue to watch this. This is not where I wanted this article. I want this one way the hell over here. Of course, the oil prices could be wrong. According to CNBC, tanking oil prices could more than double Saudi Arabia's deficit to $75 billion and threaten spending plans, Goldman Sachs economists report. From Natasha Tarak. Crashing oil prices triggered by waning demand, global trade war, fears, and a growing crude supply could more than double Saudi Arabia's budget deficit, a Goldman Sachs economist warn. The bank's outlook spotlight the pressure on the kingdom to make changes to its mammoth spending plans and fiscal measures. The deficits on the fiscal side that we're likely to see in the GCC, Gulf Cooperation Council, countries, especially with big countries like Saudi Arabia, are going to be pretty significant. Farouk Sousa, Middle East and North Africa economist at Goldman Sachs, told CNBC's Access Middle East on Wednesday. Spending by the kingdom has ballooned due to Vision 2030, a sweeping campaign to transform the Saudi economy and diversify its revenue streams away from hydrocarbons. A centerpiece of the project is NEOM, an as yet sparsely populated mega region in the desert roughly the size of Massachusetts. Plans for NEOM include hyper-futuristic developments that altogether have been estimated to cost as much as $1.5 trillion. The kingdom is also hosting the 2034 World Cup and the 2030 World Expo, both infamously costly endeavors. Is Saudi Arabia trying to move up to where China used to be? Sounds possible. Plans for NEOM include hyper-futuristic developments that altogether have been estimated... Oh, I've read that one already. Saudi Arabia needs oil at more than $90 a barrel to balance its budget, the International Monetary Fund estimates. Goldman Sachs this week lowered its year-end 2025 oil price forecast to $62 a barrel for Brent crude, down from a previous forecast of 69, a figure that the bank's economists say could more than double Saudi Arabia's 2024 budget deficit for $30.8 billion. In Saudi Arabia, we estimate that we're probably going to see the deficit go up from around $30 to $35 billion to around $70 to $75 billion if oil prices stayed around $62 this year. Wham! That's one of the hard parts, because I know a lot of the big name and especially the big news companies do have holdings across the world. Oh, looks like we're up to 145% on China. We'll see what that does to the markets. Anyway, going back to the oil prices, though, companies like CNBC and a lot of our news companies do want to see a certain side of things, like Saudi Arabia growing to be the dominant power in the region as they're our ally, and yes, they do control some of the oil supply to the world, and in part they do take some of the business away from China at this point, so, and some of the eyes off of them. But realistically, of course, we have to be America first, and honestly, yes, we do need to see energy go down in this country in a significant margin, of course. Inflation. Here's some good news for you. So, from Trueflation.com, in the midst of all this, U.S. inflation is down to 1.34%. After a slight uptick when it got down to 1.22%. We are below the 2% mark, which is the target and the goal, of course. Some of this comes from the government layoffs and the lack of money velocity. So that should be some good news. I still think we need some negative inflation. But for right now, that's where we are at. All right. All right. I have spent, how long have we been on at this point? 1.5 hours? Yeah, I've spent 1.5 hours talking about the markets, talking about trade, talking about everything else with this. Now we got to get to the hard part, the heavy part. I don't want to talk about this. My reasoning behind this, of course, is because while this has done what I think the news media wanted it to do and pitted people against each other based on social classes, skin color, economic classes, etc., I don't want to feed into that fire, but I think it is important what we talk about with this as well, especially what the news is doing. I am not going to pin my opinion on who is in the right and who is in the wrong on this one. If you want that, find some of my culture war friends who do have it decided in their heart of hearts whether Austin Metcalf or Carmelo Anthony was in the right or wrong. I am not going to talk about that. The reason I'm not going to talk about that is partially because I don't want to add to perception and add to the division that's going to come from this. But let's start with what actually happened here first. From the New York Post, Texas high school football star Austin Metcalf stabbed in the heart, left to die in twin brother's arms at track meet, per dad. From Nick McIntyre, Ronnie Reyes, and Jared Downing. A Texas high school football star was stabbed in the heart and died in the arms of his twin brother after a fight over a seat at a track meet, his heartbroken family says. Austin Metcalf was attending a track and field championship between other areas schools at Kuykendall Stadium in Frisco, Texas, when the fatal attack happened on April 2nd. Metcalf, a junior at Memorial High School outside of Dallas, was in his team's tent when a fight broke out between a teen and a 17-year-old Carmel Anthony, cops say. Anthony, a 17-year-old senior at Centennial High School, was just 5 miles away, was allegedly told he was sitting in the wrong seat. He then allegedly drew a knife and pierced Metcalf through the heart, the dead teen's father, Jeff Metcalf, told NBC Dallas-Fort Worth. Hunter, who was born 2 minutes after Austin, rushed to aid his brother but couldn't save him. I tried to whip around as fast as I could, an emotional Hunter Metcalf told WFAA. I looked at my brother, and I'm not going to talk about the rest. I tried to help him. The heartbroken brother said that neither of his siblings had ever met Anthony prior to Wednesday's meet, with the whole fight taking just seconds. It was really under 30 seconds, this altercation. I've never met this kid in my life. We asked him to move. He started getting aggressive and talking reckless, Hunter recalled. And my brother stepped in and said, "You need to move," Hunter added, and Anthony's like, "Make me move." All of a sudden, he grabbed his backpack, the brother said. Just seconds into the tussle, Hunter said Anthony pulled a knife and stabbed his brother in the chest. They were twins, identical twins, and his brother was holding onto him, trying to make it stop bleeding, and he dived in his brother's arms, Jeff Metcalf recalled. Hunter Metcalf called his parents to tell them about the stabbing, and with their father rushing to find Austin on the gurney, not breathing. I could see all the blood. I saw where the wound was, and I was very concerned, so I had to find his brother, and we rushed to the hospital, and we prayed, and it's God's plan. I don't understand it, and they weren't able to save him. This is murder, Jeff Metcalf said. The teen was pronounced dead at a local hospital. Despite life-saving measures by police and fire personnel, including CPR and the admin of blood, the 17-year-old passed away, the Frisco police said. Anthony was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. I think that was an excessive charge, based on the rundown that we just got. Second degree probably would be more appropriate if everything in the account that we just got prior to this is true. Heat of the moment. He's being held at Collin County Jail with bail set at $1 million. The grieving father questioned Anthony's upbringing and parents as he forgave his son's alleged killer. I'm not trying to judge, but what kind of parents did this child have? What was he taught? Why is this important? He brought a knife to a track meet and murdered my son by stabbing him in the heart. The guy was in the wrong place, and they asked him to leave, and he bowed up, became very angry and aggressive. This is murder, Jeff Metcalf said. You know what? I already forgave this person. Already, God takes care of things. God is going to take care of me. God is going to take care of my family, he added. Anthony, a 5'10" free safety, revealed on social media he had offers from several colleges, mostly Division III schools. His father told the Post his son was a good kid, and maintains that he did not start the fight that broke out between the two boys. Carmelo was not the aggressor. He was not the one who started it. He works 2 jobs. He's an A student. He has a 3.7 GPA. Everyone has already made up assumptions about my son, but he's not what they're making him out to be, he added. I feel bad for the other parents and family, and words can't explain how both people and families have been affected by this tragedy. Austin Metcalf was remembered as a star linebacker who had garnered attention from schools as he dreamed of playing football in college. He was recently voted his team's MVP and held a 4.0 according to a GoFundMe organized by his father, which has raised nearly $100,000 as of Thursday afternoon. He was a bright young man with a great future ahead of him, Jeff Metcalf said. He was a leader of men. His smile would light up a room. His passion for football was unbelievable. We will all remember him for the way he impacted others' lives. Now, this is one of the biggest news stories that's going on right now, with, as was mentioned in the article, both by Carmelo Anthony's father and Austin Metcalf's father, large assumptions already formed by the people who are involved in this as to who is in the right, who is in the wrong. To my knowledge at this point, and I could be wrong on this, if you have what I am about to say that there is none of, please put it in the Discord. It won't make it for today's program, and if you're watching this on the replay, obviously we won't make this on today's program or listening to this on the audio platform. To my understanding, there is absolutely no video of this currently. So everything that we have right now is from eyewitness accounts, which are probably, most likely, more heavily favored for Metcalf, given the fact that Carmelo Anthony was allegedly in a seat that was reserved for people in the school that Metcalf went to, in a reserved section for that. Statistically, that says that more of the people that were involved in this knew Austin Metcalf than Carmelo Anthony. But I'm sure if he himself was over there, then he probably had some of his friends surrounding him as well. So they're most likely eyewitnesses as well for the Carmelo Anthony side of this here. As I said when I started this out, I am not going to weigh in on who is in the right, who is in the wrong, because, well, frankly, I have a lot of hearsay sitting in front of me, and I don't have a lot of any other evidence to suggest who is in the right, who is in the wrong, how we got to this point. I could sit here and speculate over how right or wrong it was to bring a knife to a track meet at this point, knowing full well that there was often a knife in my pocket on, not at school obviously, because that was against the rules, but there was almost always one in the car while I was at school. So I guess bringing a knife to a place like that is not outside of the realm of possibility for me. They don't tell us what kind of knife it was. I mean, there's a big difference between, the different spiral thing that Jacob Blake had in the floorboards of his car when they shot him in the back in Kenosha versus having... I don't have my knife in my pocket. Oh. Yeah, I don't have my knife in my pocket right now. It's still in the garage from when we were doing the gardening. But versus having the buck knife that a lot of us use as a box cutter or a tool. So we don't know the details of what actually it was that he had in his backpack at the time. Here's my 2 cents on this. And if you follow me on X, you already know this. Or if you're in the Discord, you already know this. I'm looking at this, and I'm seeing a reason to riot. We have a case that, in and of itself, given the lack of video and evidence for this, is already incredibly ambiguous. Between two people who are very racially disparate. When I look at something like this, and I look at the way that the information has been released, it seems, again, like it's very engineered to get people to look at this in a tribal situation rather than an objective one. Partially because, again, we don't have the objective evidence. We can't see what happened with any of this. But now with this becoming outside of a local story, which in all intents and purposes, this would have never become a national story. Same with George Floyd at that point. And the media can control that narrative. We saw that with Patrick Lyoya in Michigan. Only, and I love my friends to death, but only my most racist friends saw the Patrick Loyola case as a situation where Patrick was in the wrong and the cop was in the right. Only those couple people who would have said somebody who is black is automatically in the wrong looked at the Patrick Loyola video and said that Patrick was in the wrong. Everybody else that I know with functioning neurons that move back and forth and spark looked at that and said, no, there was no reason for the cop to lean on Patrick Loyola's back while he was immobilized and shoot him point blank in the lungs with a .40 and blow his lungs out the front of his body. And that one didn't make the light of day on national news because that didn't come back and divide us. This is another story to come back out and get people at each other's throats. I'm already seeing some of it here. The whites, especially the racially motivated ones, looking at this and saying, that could have been me, that could have been my son. And our friends in the black community saying the exact same thing at this point. We did this during the Trump years on 2 different occasions. And every time I look at this, that's all that I see off of this. I do want to see what evidence comes forward in trial. Anything that we see on social media at this point is going to be tainted by emotional bias. So, that's what we have going on with that. Cannon goals take up so much counter space. Well, we'll get that finished up and we'll go and get that put away. Where is my assault knife, by the way? I think it's in the garage. Alright, let's read some more articles on this one. That is going to be a repeat of what we have on this one. From ABC 8, the disinformation has to stop. Fatal stabbing of Frisco student athlete sparks community tension because it was designed to. From WFAA staff. A fatal stabbing at the high school track meet has left the community shaken and divided because it was designed to. As families mourn the misinformation spreads online, 17-year-old Austin Metcalf, a student athlete at Memorial High School, was killed Wednesday during a university interscholastic league track and field event. Frisco police confirmed that Carmelo Anthony, a 17-year-old student at Centennial High School, is accused of stabbing Metcalf during the meet. My son is not here anymore and I don't understand it, said Megan Metcalf, the mother of Austin, told WFAA last week. While the Metcalfs mourn Austin's death, Anthony's family faces threats and harassment. According to Dominique Alexander, founder of the Next Generation Action Network, by the way, don't reach out to Anthony's family and threaten him. I don't understand why I have to say that, but don't do that. That is bad. That is wrong. My video is not playing on Rumble anymore. We're still looking at reciprocal tariffs on Rumble. Oh look, the ads. We'll be talking about that and things that I hate. Because they're so cringe. You know what's funny about doing this on Rumble right now is the fact that I'm probably going to get, I think they're a penny an ad at this point, so I'm going to get 2 cents from Rumble, from myself right there. Still packed up quite a ways too. Anyway, back to where we're at. According to Dominique Alexander, founder of NGAN, the Anthony family's home address was exposed online, leading to a wave of graphic and racist threats. Because of course it was. 3 guesses on who leaked it. The disinformation that is going online is hurting the case and it has to stop. As we know right now, Austin Metcalf and Carmelo Anthony did not know each other, Alexander said. Carmelo Anthony has a right to a fair trial, unbiased and removed from all racial hate and bigotry. Good luck with that. And by the way, I'm sure that the jurors who are on this case are going to be threatened to make sure that they rule one way or the other. The Frisco Police Department and FBI are investigating the fake social media posts posing as Chief David Shilson in the wake of the fatal stabbing. Frisco PD said in a statement that a bogus account was posing as Chief Shilson and spreading information that was false or misleading. FPD encouraged the public to only rely on verified department profiles across social media platforms. Alexander met with Frisco police officials Tuesday at NGAN headquarters, expressing concerns over the thoroughness and fairness of the investigation. The meeting lasted about an hour, during which he also discussed the dangerous spread of false narratives on social media. Following the meeting, Alexander told reporters the department had interviewed more than 75 individuals and appeared receptive to its concerns. They were able to come to me and be very sincere about it, he said. I feel comfortable right now, but we just have to see. A fundraiser on Give Send Go has raised nearly $300,000 for Anthony's family, with a goal of $350,000 according to the website. A message from the family on the page reads, "The narrative being spread is false, unjust, and harmful. As family of faith, we're deeply grateful for all of your support during this trying period. Your prayers and assistance mean more to us now than ever." Meanwhile, several GoFundMe campaigns for Anthony have been deleted by the platform. Frisco police declined an on-camera interview, but responded in writing to NGAN's concerns. City Manager Wes Pearson emphasized the department's commitment to a complete and thorough investigation, stating police continued to interview students, coaches, and others who were present. So, moving pieces to that. Let's keep going here. From NBC Dallas-Fort Worth, NBC5, attorney of track meet murder suspect to seek lower bond, victim's family prepares for burial services. From Maria Guerrero. There are new details of the fatal stabbing during a high school track meet in Frisco that ended with one teen dying in his twin brother's arms and another teen behind bars, claiming the stabbing was in self-defense. There are incredibly difficult days ahead for 17-year-old Austin Metcalf's family as they prepare to lay him to rest, according to the family. His alleged killer, 17-year-old Anthony, remains in the Collin County Jail charged with murder. NBC5 has learned the suspect's family hired defense attorney Derek Walpole on Friday. Despite only having a few hours to learn about the case and meet with his clients, Walpole agreed to speak briefly with NBC5 outside the jail on Friday afternoon. "I know that my client said it was self-defense. I don't have any reason to disbelieve that, but I need to develop facts, talk with people, and figure out what's going on before I make my statements about what happened," said Walpole. "I don't have any reason to think it wasn't self-defense at this time." Walpole confirmed to NBC5 he's requested a hearing next week to lower Anthony's $1 million bond. That also seems excessive, by the way. The deadly encounter happened at about 10 a.m. Wednesday during a district track meet at Kuykendall Stadium in Frisco. So, I do have to say that minor, first offense from what I understand. Yes, it's a very heinous crime, but $1 million bond is probably excessive. If you're going to put it that high, then you should just remand without bail. From the Daily Mail, Austin Metcalf conspiracy theory destroyed by spokesperson for killer boy whose family can no longer go outside. From Germania Rodriguez Poleo, chief U.S. reporter. A young athlete stabbed to death at Texas track meet did not know his 17-year-old killer. A spokesperson for the family's killer said it after conspiracy theory suggested he'd previously been bullied by his victim. Austin Metcalf was killed by Carmelo Anthony at Kuykendall Stadium last week in Frisco. Dominique Alexander, a spokesman for Anthony, was forced to deny that Anthony had been bullied by Metcalf before the fatal confrontation at the match. The disinformation that is going online is hurting the case and it has to stop. As we know right now, Austin and Carmelo did not know each other, said Alexander, who works with the Next Generation Action Network. So, that is what we have for that. I don't like the way that this one is, again, structured because it comes out and it looks like this was being done with malice. How Austin Metcalf's accused killer is raking in cash for his legal defense, as 6 conspiracy theories about his victim spread hate, fear, and division. From Jared Downing. The Texas teen charged with fatally stabbing high school football star Austin Metcalf raked in nearly $200,000 for his legal defense in a matter of hours after post-impersonating officials spread fake news about the killing, including painting the victim as a violent, drug-addicted bully. Frisco Police Chief David Shilson warned the Dallas suburb that online trolls are trying to sow discord over the racially charged case, which shocked the nation after Metcalf's family said he died in the arms of his identical twin brother after a very brief altercation. Meanwhile, Anthony's family has hired 2 hotshot Dallas lawyers who've made names for themselves fighting headline-grabbing racial justice cases. So, keep that in mind as we go. If you do want to see the arrest record, it is in the Discord. So I left this up here. All of the pertinent information has been redacted. You guys can go check that out. It's an article worth investigating. All right, and with that, we move on to the protests from CNN. Elon Musk has got to go because they have to continue to use that tired old slogan. Protesters rally worldwide against Musk and Trump. With video. Over 1,400 hands-off protests broke out around the world as millions protested U.S. President Trump, Elon Musk, and the duo shared political limelight in what hands-off demonstrators called a hostile takeover and attack on American rights and freedom. Let's watch.
Hey, ho, ho! Elon Musk has got to go!
Across the U.S. and the world, more than 1,400...
Okay, I say this every time we watch one of these protest videos too. You are the party that has the monopoly, outright monopoly, on artists and musicians. Can you not write a better protest slogan than this? Seriously?
100 protests on Saturday, according to organizers, telling U.S. President Donald Trump and his advisor Elon Musk, hands off.
Hands off Canada! Hands off Greenland!
People taking to the streets in Portugal, Germany, France, the UK, and North America. Many are Americans living abroad.
I've never seen things worse in America than now.
Organized by pro-democracy groups such as labor unions, LGBTQ+ advocates, veterans, and election activists uniting against the Trump administration's policies on the economy, human rights, and more.
Hands off means restore what we've had as a democracy. In fact, when we were making our poster and we were saying what to have...
What do you mean restore what we had as a democracy? He won the popular vote.
Hands off. We had trouble limiting the list. The list got so long between free speech and reproductive rights and Social Security. I mean, we could have done 20 other things.
Hands off the UK!
In London's Trafalgar Square, one protester holds a sign reading, "Keep your tiny orange hands off the world." Hundreds of demonstrators came out in London, also in Frankfurt and Berlin, Germany.
We have to show solidarity with all the demonstrations in 1,000 cities today in the USA. We have to show that we are not in agreement with what is happening in the USA. People in Germany, people in Europe need to know that. This is not something that is happening with our approval, and we need to get onto our feet and out in the streets to show that this is something that will not pass.
If Musk can do this to federal employees.
So that's what some of the protests look like. And yes, they always use the same tired slogan. They haven't written a new one in 70 years. Check on the markets quick, and then we'll go check in with our friends over at NPR. Still sliding. Ooh, 1,200 points back down. Hey, stocks are on sale again. Not official financial advice. We do have one over our friends over at NPR. Nationwide, hands-off protests erupt against Trump and Musk. This is from Juliana Kim, and remember, you have to hit that donate button because NPR cannot say hands off NPR's funding, which is only 10% government funded, and the ad revenue is not there. So hit that donate button because it's not your money, comrade. It is our money. NPR is never printing reality. National Progressive Radio. Let's see what it is that they have to say. Demonstrators gathered across the country on Saturday, many animated by differing issues. From what I've heard, by the way, with people doing man-on-the-street interviews with some of them, many of them didn't even know what they were out there protesting. But united in opposition to the Trump admin with a single message, hands off. Organizers said more than 1,300 hands-off rallies of varying sizes took place on Saturday. Since the Donald took office in January, various protests have taken place against his admin's plans and policies, from mass firing of federal workers to immigration raids to the involvement of billionaire Elon Musk in the federal government. Saturday's protests appeared to be the most widespread to date of Trump's second term. There are so many issues, said Kelly Laird of Rockville, Maryland, who attended a rally in D.C. on Saturday. They're coming after education, coming after healthcare, coming after the arts, coming after the press. In Boston, protesters gathered to push back against the federal cuts to research and against the arrest of Rumiesa Ozturk, a Tufts University doctoral student who was arrested by federal agents in plain clothes, as member station WBUR reported. In Sylva, North Carolina, over 300 people came together to oppose cuts to national parks, education, and veteran services, according to BPR News, and in Portland, Oregon. Several thousand people rallied against what they describe as an illegal billionaire power grab by Trump and Musk, OPB reported. I'd like to know how it's illegal. Again, based on the fact that it reached the threshold of legal with the popular vote, the electoral vote, transfer of power. In D.C., thousands filled the grass near the Washington Monument, holding up signs supporting reproductive rights, LGBTQI, RAMIGI, XTBY, AEIOU, sometimes Y rights, Social Security, veterans benefits, and opposing tariffs. Laird and her neighbors said they formed a group chat after Trump took office this year. They used the group chat, named Sisters of the Resistance, to coordinate attending protests together and offer support. What are you resisting exactly? I've never ever understood this. Most major corporations, the vast majority of universities, institutional power, government agencies are all in your favor in this. What are you resisting? It's like the sequel trilogy in Star Wars, The Resistance. Did you ever notice that? The Resistance that they have in the sequel trilogy, which is made up of members of the acting government of the galaxy. Are resisting what exactly? I mean, it's being led by one of the chief senators of the acting government of the galaxy. Many attendees who spoke to NPR said they felt compelled to show up because new concerns keep emerging. This is the first time I'm trying to regularly participate, said Patty Kim, a retired federal worker who attended the DC rally with her husband. I felt so frustrated and paralyzed by the bunch of things that are going on that undermine human rights and humanity in this country that I love. I had to do something. Veterans Colleen Boland and Sonia Lundy, who have been actively participating in protest, said they view it as a continuation of the military oath they took years ago to protect Americans. We took an oath long ago to protect against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I don't think either Sonia or I ever imagined that we would have to kick in on the domestic piece of our oath, but we are, and we will, said Boland, who said she served in the Army and Air Force. They're especially concerned with the future of Social Security and veterans benefits. While the White House has insisted the Trump admin will not make cuts to Social Security, there are plans for major changes, including the closure of dozens of Social Security offices, the elimination of thousands of jobs, and a new policy that will require more stringent identity checks. I was going to rely on the money. Is it going to be there? Said Lundy, who said she served in the Army. Another one from NPC, demonstrators rally in hands-off protests against Trump policies and Musk-led government cuts. From Alexandra Marquez, Matt Lavietes, and Dennis Romero. Coast-to-coast oppo to upheaval in President Trump's second term took shape on Saturday at more than 1,200 events organized by Democratic activists. Protesters across the U.S. took to the streets in a series of hands-off demonstrations decrying Trump's border enforcement and deportation policies, as well as mass firings under the Department of Government Efficiency. In a statement released before the event, organizers said Trump and his billionaire advisor, Doge Elon Musk, have created an unnecessary crisis under the belief that this country belongs to them exclusively. They're taking everything they can get their hands on, our healthcare, our data, our jobs, our services, and daring the world to stop them, the organizers said in a statement. This is a crisis and the time to act is now. It sounds mildly insurrection-y, but of course that's not going to be labeled as such. In D.C., demand to participate in the protests was strong enough that alternative events were held for those who couldn't get to the National Mall for the main event, organizer Barbara Green told NPC Washington. We thought we would give people a chance to show their strong feelings about what the government is doing and how it's hurting lots and lots of people, she said. Green characterized Trump's short term in office during term 2 as chaotic. I can't even name all the ways things have gone off the rails, she said. I'm going to go on a limb and say it's because she doesn't know. Among those who gathered at the National Monument on Saturday was Trump voter Ramesh Boodram of Copiague, New York, who was having some regrets as he contemplates possible disruptions of Social Security, which again are not going to happen. I'm a senior citizen, Boodram said. He wants to step into our Social Security checks. It's not nice. No, he doesn't. Boodram has been keeping score during Trump's first 75 days and suggested some promises haven't been kept. I thought it would be a little better. He's saying he's going to drop gas prices, the supermarket, the food stuff. It didn't happen. I don't know about what happened where you live, but our groceries are going down, especially the eggs. Assistant White House Press Secretary Liz Houston said in an email, President Trump's position is clear. He will always protect Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid for eligible beneficiaries. Meanwhile, the Democrat stance is giving Social Security, Medicaid, and Medicare benefits to illegal aliens, which will bankrupt these programs and crush the American seniors. Everett B. Kelly, president of the American Federation of Government Employees, rallied demonstrators in Washington. We will not be silenced. We will not bow down. We will stand up and say, hands off our union. We'll stand up and say, hands off our contract. We'll stand up and say, hands off our democracy, hands off our freedom, Kelly told the crowd. Which again, given the fact that the popular vote was won by the current administration, seems kind of undemocratic to me. Bubble-headed bleach blonde responds to hands-off protests. Democrats are officially the party of crazy. From Jack Abrams. Which we can actually watch this one because that's video instead of looking at the transcripts.
Caroline Leavitt, the White House press secretary. Caroline, is the president taking the resistance seriously?
How could you take them seriously after those videos, Jesse? I'm not sure if I should laugh or cry that this is the current state of the modern day Democrat Party. The Democrat Party has been completely captivated by these far left lunatics. And I'm not sure which Democrat on Capitol Hill is going to stand up and be the sensible voice, but I won't hold my breath, and best of luck to them if one chooses to stand up. They are enjoying their lowest approval rating ever because this is who they are trying to represent. These far left activists who don't stand for anything. They only stand against Donald Trump, and they hate, as you just heard from that one individual who wished death upon the president of the United States, they not just hate him, they hate the nearly 80 million Americans who elected to vote him. The Democrats have officially become the party of crazy. President Trump and the Republicans are the party of common sense.
Yeah, my constituents were on their hands and knees.
Yeah, and this is one of the things that bothers me too, and I think that some of it is, it's being driven by the loudest voices, but I don't think that a lot of the leftoids, especially the ones who go out to these big protests like this, have all the hatred for all of the rest of us, myself included, who voted for Trump this time through. God, I still can't believe that I'm saying those words out loud either, by the way. I don't think that there's a huge consensus of we hate all these people, we want to get rid of all these people, but the loudest voices get amplified. And I put a couple in the Discord the other day, and it's just these people who are like, I hate him, I hate his family, I hate everybody who voted for him, and one person actually calling for deletion of him, his family, and everybody who voted for him. And it's the loud voices that are there to push the division, to get the angry clicks. So to speak. Russia reacts to hands-off protests. Deep State applying its playbook. Because of course we have to hear from Russia on this. Why wouldn't we? I almost didn't include this one because it was so stupid. But I decided to keep it on. Cursor, come on. From Isabel Van Bruggen. Kirill Dmitriev, a businessman and investment envoy to President Putin, has suggested that the mass demonstrations held in the U.S. over the weekend protesting Trump's leadership may have been orchestrated by the so-called Deep State. Newsweek has contacted the hands-off movement and Russia's foreign ministry for comment by email. That is... I almost said it too. I kept it clean. I almost dropped the F-bomb right there. That is rich. coming from Russia. A complaint about a deep state coming from Russia? Are you serious right now? Are we in clown world here? Russia has the deepest of the deep states in history. And they're going to come talk about somebody else's deep state? Really? Holy crap. I can't with some of these news stories. How do Zoomers do it? I literally can't even. MSNBC, 14 of the most eye-catching hands-off protest signs from the anti-Trump demonstrations. Here are the ones for the Social Security. I paid SSA tax for 53 years. I earned my pay. Look, I pay into SSA too, but I know for a fact it's not going to be there in 30 years when I go to retire. Really shouldn't be using the government as your savings account. Anyway. Where's the compassion? Stay out of Medicaid, Social Security, education, veterans, and due process. What due process are you bringing up with that, I wonder? These aren't memorable signs. No one voted for Musk. Nobody did vote for Musk. Democracy dies while Trump lies. My IRA! It's funny because there were bigger plummets during the Biden admin and nobody said a word. Dear Canada, we hate him too. Jeez. Doge dismantling our government efficiently. That's actually pretty based, honestly. Is that a protest sign? Or is that a counter-protest sign? No country for old con men. Yeah, okay, that's... None of these are memorable. This is all cringe. I mean, it's not at least it's not a wall of text. This one was a corporately manufactured one. Don't like surprises, protect NOAA. No tariffs penguins, because apparently we're putting tariffs on Antarctica. I haven't seen any confirmation about that. So, yeah, none of this was really memorable. MSNBC, do better. This is more memorable, by the way. And I go back and forth with this moron. I do. How it started, Occupy Wall Street. How it's going, hands off Wall Street. Yeah, you remember when the leftoids hated Wall Street? Fanning says, I think the due process is a reference to deporting folks that haven't been convicted. That is a possibility, actually. Alright, moving on. Got a few more left and then we'll start heading out of here. We might hit 3. I don't think so. I'm going to try not to. Because I'm hungry. I haven't eaten yet today. Except a couple of Oreos. From NPR again, Supreme Court lets Trump move forward with firing thousands of federal workers. From Nina Totenberg and Christina Gatti. And remember, hit that donate button. Because they can't tell you how bad it is to fire federal workers or lay them off or let go of people who were overhired for jobs that are not needed unless you hit that donate button. The Supreme Court on Tuesday allowed for an advertisement for NPR on NPR to pop up in the middle of my screen. The Supreme Court on Tuesday allowed Trump admin's firing of 16,000 probationary federal employees to go forward, at least for now. Without addressing the question of whether the terminations themselves were lawful, the court, in an unsigned order, said the nonprofits that brought the case did not have the legal standing to sue over federal employees' firings. Justices Sonia Sotomayor and KBJ would have kept the firings paused while the case plays out in lower courts. The court's narrow ruling applies only to the nonprofits in Tuesday's lawsuit and did not decide the case as a whole. Nonetheless, the court's decision makes it more difficult for the groups affected by the government layoffs to challenge mass firings systematically. In that sense, the court's action is a victory for the Trump admin and its effort to dramatically shrink the federal agencies and programs concentrating executive power in the White House. Following an EO signed by Trump on February 11th, the Office of Personnel Management told agencies to terminate all but essential probationary employees. Probationary employees are typically recent agency hires or tenured employees serving in new roles. Various agencies promptly began firing employees, ultimately totaling tens of thousands. Federal workers' unions and a group of nonprofit organizations sued the office, and several agencies, including the Departments of Veterans Affairs, Agriculture, Defense, Energy, Interior, and the Treasury, to halt the firings. Those challenges, the dismissals, argued that the OPM didn't have the authority to order firings, which is a wild defense, by the way. They also argued the federal government did not follow the proper procedure for firing probationary federal workers, including providing adequate notice to the terminated employees and the affected state and local governments. They gave them 11 months, folks. Judge Bill Haskell Alsop, a district judge in San Francisco appointed by Clinton, initially ruled that while the unions had no legal standing to bring the case, the nonprofits did have standing. Because they depend on the government services, they say they're negatively affected by the government's reduced capacity. Honestly, I think the affected employees are the only ones who would really have the standing. After a brief hearing last month, Alsop reinstated federal employees at 6 departments. Alsop said the Office of Personnel Management, which helps set the government's human resources policies, could not direct agencies to conduct mass firings. Rather, only the departments themselves can make those decisions. The government countered that OPM did not direct the agencies to do anything and that the terminations were otherwise lawful. It took the argument to the Court of Appeals, which refused to intervene immediately. So, at this point, yes, they can go through. And in another SCOTUS win, Supreme Court allows Trump to deport Venezuelans under Alien Enemies Act after judge's review. The Supreme Court on Monday allowed the Trump admin to use an 18th century wartime law to deport Venezuelan migrants, but said they must get a court hearing before they're taken from the United States. Due process. In a bitterly divided decision, the court said the admin must give Venezuelans who claim are gang members reasonable time to go to court. But the conservative majority said the legal challenges must take place in Texas instead of a Washington courtroom. Because that's where I believe the migrants were being scooped up from was from Texas. The court's action appears to bar the admin from immediately resuming the flights that last month carried hundreds of migrants to a notorious prison in El Salvador. The flights came soon after President Trump invoked the Alien Enemies Act for the first time since World War II to justify the deportations under a presidential proclamation called the Tren de Aragua Gang, an invading force. The majority said nothing about these flights, which took off without providing the hearing the justices now say is necessary. In dissent, the 3 liberal justices said the admin has sought to avoid judicial review in this case, and the court now rewards the government for its behavior. Amy Coney Barrett joined portions of the dissent, which led to a lot of people calling her a traitor. Sonia Sotomayor said it would be harder for people to challenge the deportations individually, wherever they're being held, and noted that the admin has also said, in another case before the court, it's unable to return people who have been deported to the El Salvador prison by mistake. The death penalty argument. We as a nation and a court of law should be better than this, she wrote. The justices acted on the admin's emergency appeal after the federal appeals court in D.C. left in place the order temporarily prohibiting deportations of the migrants accused of being gang members under the Rarely Used Alien Enemies Act. For all the rhetoric of the dissents, the courts wrote in an unsigned opinion, the High Court confirms the detainees subject to removal orders under the AEA are entitled to notice and an opportunity to challenge their removal. Again, something we've talked about here before, and this does. And I like the way that the decision was worded on this too. This is something I've been struggling with people on X and even back on the Boomer book, because when I started down this campaign, I still used it at the time. But one of the continual arguments that I've been having with people is the fact that we come to the decision whether your rights are from the government or your rights are from God. I have always said you have the right to an attorney. You have the right to your due process of law to go through the court system. The U.S. government themselves have offered the labor of others, but that's more of a privilege than a right. So let me back up here, because I'm going off my topic of where I want to go with this. The Bill of Rights has suggested, and also along with the Federalist Papers have supported this, that we do have the right, all the rights that are afforded to us in the Bill of Rights are granted by our Creator and not necessarily by the government. Now, in this is the right to face our accuser, the right to fair trial, speedy trial, things like that. Those are things that are granted by our Creator. And deportation without hearing would actually fall under something like this. Now, as far as, and a lot of people bring up the right to a public defender on something like this, in a case like that, that's not a right, because that requires the labor of somebody else and the government to enforce the labor of somebody else. Now, if you bring your own lawyer that you've hired, the government can't come back and say, no lawyers, get him out of here, you must face us alone. But the public defender is a privilege that's granted by our government, because it is the labor of somebody else, to the people of this nation. Whether or not it gets extended to the people of another nation who are fighting extradition and or deportation, I mean, that is something that we actually probably should get down to the courts and make a decision on. I would honestly vote no, that's not a requirement. And if these lawyers want to go back pro bono outside of their own hours, outside of the public defender's office, that is their business, and they might go back and do that. But I've always had a problem with the go back and throw the deportation without a hearing on this kind of thing. Even if we know full well that they're guilty off of this, they have no documents, we catch them jumping the border. I mean, if we catch them jumping the border, the Border Patrol should be able to come back out and say, nah, turn around, go back, get out of here. No, go, scoot. But yes, when they're ordering federal agencies to come and grab them inside of the country, deep inside the country, that's a different story. And yes, we are afforded due process. It's not afforded to us by the government. It's afforded to us by our Creator. It's a sticky situation in and of itself. All right, speaking of the courts, House passes National Injunction Bill. Just one Republican voted against the measure. This is DOA, by the way. This is not going to get through the Senate. But it's an interesting exercise as well from Haley Fuchs. The House passed legislation Wednesday that would limit the power of lower court judges to issue orders with broad national implications amid a rash of rulings to halt the Trump admin's agenda. Members voted 219 to 213 on the No Rogue Rulings Act, with just one Republican joining Democrats in opposition. It represents the House GOP's leadership's latest response to President Trump's growing anger at the federal judiciary, which has served as the primary obstacle for his admin's sweeping efforts to transform the government and implement aggressive immigration policies. Trump and his base have increasingly called for the House to impeach judges who have ruled against him, but without the votes to do so, House leadership has been looking for alternatives to placate the right flank of the GOP, including with this bill from Rep. Darrell Issa of California. In recent years, it's become glaringly obvious that federal judges are overstepping their constitutional bounds, said Issa on the House floor during debate last Tuesday. This is not a partisan issue. It may be a timely issue for this president, but that does not make it partisan. Still, the bill is almost certain to fail in the Senate. No, it is certain to fail in the Senate, where Republicans must accrue enough support from their Democratic colleagues to meet the 60-vote threshold. The lack of enthusiasm among House Democrats for this proposal signals it's highly unlikely Republicans across the Capitol will find necessary bipartisan support. So, I also don't agree with this, and I will fall into the disfavor of many more Trumpy friends of mine by bringing this up, and that's the fact that no, the federal courts should be there to injunct the president when he's acting outside of his bounds. And think of all the times that you've praised the federal courts when they blocked an order from Obama or Biden. You're mad because it's your guy. You're not mad at the federal judiciary, and you love the federal judiciary when you can use it to advance or your agenda or stop the opposing agenda. But now, yes, now we want to go back and through this. The hard part, especially coming from presidential orders, is the broad sweeping side of things. Means that this affects people across the entire nation as a whole. So yes, they can go back to a sympathetic judge and say, stop this, please stop this. It actually goes back to what we were just talking about in the previous article as well, based on the fact that they didn't feel, because of where the immigrants were picked up initially when they got set for their flight over to Venezuela, that the DC court had any jurisdiction to come back and look this one over, in spite of the fact that our friends in the ACLU judge shopped for the DC court to go back and take up this case because they thought the DC court ruled in their favor. The Supreme Court saying that this actually had to be heard in Texas, where the migrant flights were leaving from. The hard part here is the fact that, again, we'll use a Biden policy that the Republicans love the federal judiciary for blocking. The student loan forgiveness bill. Now, yes, Republicans judge shopped and found a sympathetic federal court in Missouri to come back and hear this case and take up this case, knowing full well that this most likely would have otherwise wound up in a DC Circuit Court of Appeals, based on the fact that the order was issued from, actually I think it was issued from Delaware, but regardless, it still falls under the same judicial district, the federal court in DC. So yes, you can easily go back and judge shop around to go find it when it's something that's implicating everywhere across the country. But yes, the same Republicans that just voted for this in the House loved the Missouri court for blocking the Biden student loan forgiveness program. They loved that. And I like the fact that there's a judiciary, there's something standing in the way from giving the president all power. I don't care which one is in power. From Ian Yeager, Democrats held a shadow government hearing today. This is apparently unconstitutional. We'll listen to this, then we'll read briefly from NPR.
Extraordinary step of convening this unprecedented hearing. We brought together both chambers of Congress, the Senate and the House, to conduct real oversight and to serve as a check and balance, to hold those who misuse power to account and to carry out our constitutional duty. Convening this hearing was not our first choice. We have tried to get our Republican colleagues to hold hearings, to do meaningful oversight, to assert Congress's authority as an independent branch of government. But to our great disappointment, our Republican colleagues have abdicated that important responsibility. They have stood by as the President has run roughshod over the legislative branch and turned Congress into little more than a rubber stamp. So today we'll hold the first of what we hope will be more bicameral oversight hearings. We will do the investigative work that our colleagues across the aisle refuse to do. We will expose the illegality, abuse, and corruption of this administration and within the Department of Justice. We will have brave witnesses speak to what's actually happening behind closed doors, how the Trump administration continues to try to intimidate them from speaking out, and why it matters to Americans across the country. The Trump administration is following a well-worn playbook. History serves as a guide and as a warning. In the 1930s, a Jewish lawyer in Berlin tracked in meticulous detail how Germany gradually became what he called a dual state. First, to keep the country running, the ordinary legal system remained in place for most people. And yet, step by step, a parallel system of governance and law emerged, what one scholar called a lawless zone. A parallel system carry out the will of the leader and to go after his enemies, real or perceived, to punish, to reward, to co-opt, to intimidate, silence, or take over institutions that make a society free and vibrant, the courts, the lawyers, the universities, the press, even businesses. And over time.
So, TLDR, even though we just listened, is we have to come back and form a parallel government because Trump is a Nazi. You knew he was going to go right for 30s Germany, too. Another one from our friends over at NPR. No, we're going to skip that one. All right, Ryan Ruth, the would-be assassin at the Mar-a-Lago. Or no, that wasn't Mar-a-Lago, that was Palm Beach. Breaking, the DOJ has revealed that Trump's would-be assassin, Ryan Ruth, tried to purchase military weapons from Ukraine, including a rocket launcher, in a plot to delete Trump. The Ukrainian government was allegedly aware of the assassination plan, with documentation and video, which is also in the Discord. There's already been a robust discussion about that one. From Fox News, Trump assassination attempt suspect Ryan Ruth sought rocket launcher from Ukraine. Why did he want a rocket launcher? This is not hyperbole. According to his statement, it's because he wanted to blow Air Force One out of the sky. Sounds like a charming fellow. From Sarah Rumpf-Witten and Jake Gibson. Federal prosecutors reveal that Ryan Ruth, the accused would-be assassin of Trump, sought to obtain military-grade weapons, including a rocket launcher, from a Ukrainian contact as a part of his alleged assassination plot. Ruth told his associate to send me an RPG, or Stinger. I will see what I can do. Trump is not good for Ukraine, according to court documents obtained by Fox News. The pair discussed Ruth's purchase options, with Ruth inquiring if his associate could ship it to me. We can't get a Thompson through the mail right now, but apparently this guy can order an RPG. Right through the mail. Ruth went on to say the weapons of war get lost all the time on the battlefield, and one missing would not be noticed, according to court records. Holy crap. Prosecutors say that Ruth also floated the idea of obtaining a rocket or missile launcher, with the suspect sending his associate an image of Trump's plane and writing, "Trump's plane, he gets on and off daily." Can you imagine if somebody had said any of this about Biden? The world would end. Ruth's defense also submitted court filings Monday, including a 13-page motion alleging law enforcement used impermissibly suggestive tactics when interviewing an eyewitness identified as TCM. They claim the witness felt pressured to identify Ruth because of an intense atmosphere created by the presence of multiple law enforcement agencies. All these circumstances created heightened pressure to make the identification, the filing said. It would not be difficult for any well-meaning individual to identify one and only person law enforcement presented them in this manner. Fox News Digital has reached out to Ruth's legal team and the FBI for comment. So, and here's the question, of course, if you can cross this out, if you can cross-examine this out, why are you trying to block the testimony? Unless, of course, you don't think that you can actually win this on cross. And yeah, the rest of these are the same stuff. Trump assassination attempt suspect wants to suppress eyewitness because of an improper statement. Because again, they don't think they can go back and get this on cross. From Newsweek, Greg Abbott gives update on Muslim City project in Texas. From James Bickerton, Texas Governor Greg Abbott, Hot Wheels, said dozens of state agencies in the Lone Star State, along with Attorney General Ken Paxton, are investigating plans by the East Plano Islamic Center to create a new Islamic-focused settlement dubbed Epic City in Collin and Hunt counties. Newsweek contacted the East Plano Islamic Center for comment via email on Tuesday outside of regular office hours. Plans for Epic City have already proven controversial, with Abbott in February commenting Sharia law is not allowed in Texas. In response to the project, though, organizers haven't said they plan to impose Sharia law in the settlement. During his first term in office, Trump banned people from a number of predominantly Muslim countries from entering the U.S., having called for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the country. Earlier this month, the New York Times, a former newspaper, published what it claimed was a draft memo from the Trump admin proposing a fresh entry ban on citizens of 11 countries, of which 7 are a Muslim majority. In an ex-post on Monday, Abbott wrote the proposed Epic compound in Collin County has serious legal issues. A dozen state agencies are investigating it. The AG will look into it. The legislators are considering laws to restrict it, as well as laws to prevent foreign adversaries from buying land in Texas. The Epic City proposal project is being managed by Community Capital Partners, which was created by Epic, according to an official website. If constructed, Epic City would be built on a 402-acre site which covers parts of Collin and Hunt counties. Preliminary plans include 1,000 houses, a mosque, a faith school, a community college, and a sports facility split into two sections, Epic Ranches 1 and 2. In February, an update, East Plano Islamic Center residents Yashir Qadi said the plan to create a Muslim neighborhood which would be well integrated into wider community. So, I have some issues with this, and I have some issues with Texas' response to this. Now, if you want to go through, and I don't know the full policy, I've kind of looked into a little bit of this, and create your own municipality in your state, and you follow all of the state's constitutional guidelines, county guidelines, etc. I don't understand why they would want to come back out and stop you from doing this. I'm sure that they have reasons to do so, but I don't get it either. But some of these things, especially if they're touting this as being a major religious community, I think are going to run afoul of constitutional law and the right to free association. Now, a lot of this will depend, and I haven't looked into this prior to looking into this for today. a lot of this will depend on whether or not any of this is exclusionary. The East Plano Islamic Center, are they going to say that no non-Islamics can move in? That there has to be a skin color code, which I doubt that there would be on something like that because it's a faith, not necessarily a skin color. Are they going to oppose any of those kinds of things? And that kind of stuff I would stand against. If you've got the facilities and the schools and the things that people want, then yes, absolutely do so. Now, if you come back and settle this area predominantly with Muslim people, and a Catholic wants to go back and move in, I mean, it's his business to go do so, but I'll already advise coming off of this, you're not going to feel really, really welcome at this point either. I think that there's going to be a lot of pressure to do so, but I mean, if they're legally barring a Catholic from buying property in this, that's a completely different story, and I don't agree with that. So I think this is going to be a long, drawn-out, back-and-forth fight between Texas and the people here. All right. From CBS News, just briefly on this, attorney for mosque developers behind Epic City accused governor of spreading lies about the project. From Caroline Vandergriff. The developers behind a proposed Muslim community called Epic City have hired a high-profile attorney, Dan Kodjal, to help them navigate multiple state investigations. Kodjal accused Abbott of spreading lies about the project at a press conference on Thursday. To have people who are of a different faith than some folks to be basically terrorized because of false information put out by the government is an insult, Kodjal said. It's a shame and it needs to stop. Kodjal, who now represents East Plano Islamic Center and Community Capital Partners, the development group behind the Epic City, says his clients have been receiving dozens of death threats because misinformation about the product. And there we go with the death threats again. These aren't foreign adversaries, says Kodjal. These are Texans, these are Americans, these are U.S. citizens. Kodjal believes Epic City is the victim of racial profiling. It's a proposed Muslim community that would include 1,000 homes, a mosque, apartments, a school, and more than 400 acres near Josephine in Collin County. Developer said it will be open to anyone. Well, that answers one of the questions I had in the other article. So, we'll continue to monitor the situation, the back and forth of this. We'll see where it goes. Let's check the Dow one more time. We'll finish off our last few articles. We'll do things I like, things I hate. Ooh, that's probably not a good sign. We'll see what happens with that. 1,800 points down. Did we not watch Jurassic Park, people? From ABC News, scientists say they revived a dire wolf through biotech company's de-extinction process. From John Schlossberg, Tommy Brooksbank, and Mireya Villarreal. And they have Jurassic Park footage playing in the video as well. In a scientific breakthrough that could forever change how humans interact with our planet, Colossal Biosciences has said it brought back an extinct animal that last walked the Earth roughly 10,000 years ago, the dire wolf. The US-based biotech company, also known for its ambitious goal of bringing back the extinct woolly mammoth by 2028. Colossal also said it's cloned 4 red wolves, a critically endangered animal with under 2 dozen thought to be left in the wild. Now, see, that I don't have an issue with. Bringing back red wolves because they are naturally occurring right now. They have an environment, even though it's shrinking. They have a native population. We're not a foundation, we're not a nonprofit, we're not an academic think tank. We're trying to actually develop products and build technologies. Ben Lamb, the company's CEO and co-founder, told ABC News. Colossal says its investors include Tom Brady, Tiger Woods, Paris Hilton, and Peter Jackson. In March, the company revealed the woolly mouse, a new type of mouse with a thicker coat of fur modeled after the woolly mammoth. ABC News was given exclusive access to Colossal's Dallas laboratory, where the dire wolf went from an idea to reality. I had all the confidence that this was going to work, said Beth Shapiro, Colossal's chief scientist, told ABC News. Shapiro's team had to extract more dire wolf DNA from 2 existing fossils to better sequence the animal's genome. From there, Colossal elected to use a close relative of the dire wolf as a base. We've taken the gray wolf genome, a gray wolf cell, which is already genetically 99.5% identical to dire wolves because they're closely related, Shapiro said, and we've edited those cells at multiple places in its DNA sequence to contain the dire wolf version of the DNA. So, here is the issue that I have with this. It's not that we're bringing back species like the red wolf. I think that's really cool. It's the fact that Barble just said it right. We spent so much time trying to see if we could, we didn't stop to see if we should. Now, as far as the red wolf goes, yes, that is a current existing species. The research doing so can come back and bring the species back to life, revive the population, and prevent extinction among a species that's currently walking around the earth. Now, if you go outside, and my more Christian friends at this point that I'm about to say, you can just cover your ears and say la 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 of this. I'll give you a second to go back and cover your ears. Okay. If you go outside the natural track and realize the fact that dire wolves have been extinct for 10,000 years means that they have been extinct for longer than recorded history at this point. Longer than we've had Babylon, Egypt. Egypt, I guess, was still probably starting as a civilization when dire wolves were walking around the earth the last time through. But the point that I'm going is this wasn't a species like probably the red wolf that was hunted out to extinction by men. This is something that went extinct before man went around, for probably a reason, and that we don't know, but I don't know about this, and I don't know where this goes. And I know that it's a drama movie based on a Michael Crichton novel, but I'm going to come right back out and say, have we thought about how this affects local wildlife? What happens if they get out? Life finds a way. When they get out of captivity and, hey, the genome is 99.5% identical to the gray wolf, so now they can sit back and breed uncontrollably. I'm thinking that this is, and this could go astoundingly too, and put a big balance into the natural ecosystem. It's possible that it goes that direction as well. I don't see a world where it goes well. We'll see. For now, I think the dire wolf is better served as its role in Diablo 2. Russell Brand has been accused of rape and sexual assault. I'm surprised it took this long, honestly. From Sky News, Russell Brand has been charged with rape and 2 counts of sexual assault between 1999 and 2005. The Metro Police say the 50-year-old comedian, actor, and author has also been charged with 1 count of oral rape and 1 count of indecent assault. The charges relate to 4 women. He's due to appear in Westminster Magistrates Court on Friday, May 2nd. Police have said Brand is accused of raping women in the Bournemouth area in 1999 and indecently assaulting women in the Westminster area of London in 2001. So, 20-plus-year-old accusations. stemming as soon, well, actually, like I said, I'm actually a little surprised that it took this long because he's been vocally anti-establishment for a while. The fourth charge alleges woman was sexually assaulted in Westminster between 04 and 05. Police began investigating Brand from Oxfordshire in September 23 after receiving a number of allegations. This is one that I want to see the courts go through on. I have my suspicions that a lot of this is politically motivated because it's the same playbook that's constantly used. A statement back from Brand on this one. We'll see what he has to say. Let's have a listen.
Hello. Firstly, thank you for these incredible and overwhelming messages of support. We're very fortunate in a way to live in a time where there's so little trust in the British government. We're very fortunate, I suppose, that this is happening at a time where we know that the law has become a kind of weapon to be used against people, institutions, and sometimes entire nations that will not accept and tolerate levels of corruption that are unprecedented. I'm speaking particularly to those of you that are watching this in the UK. How do you feel about your legal system right now? How do you feel about some of the high-profile cases that are not being pursued and prosecuted? How do you feel that the Southport murders were handled? How do you feel about the government of Keir Starmer? Now, that's just sort of general context. Me, I've always told you guys that when I was young and single, before I had my wife and family, who were just out of shot over there, my beautiful children, I was a fool, man. I was a fool before I lived in the light of the Lord. I was a drug addict, a sex addict, and an imbecile. But what I never was a rapist. I've never engaged in non-consensual activity. I pray that you can see that by looking in my eyes. I want to thank all of you for your continuing support. I want to let you know that our show will be on Rumble on Monday. Thanks for your support there. And of course, I'm now going to have the opportunity to defend these charges in court, and I'm incredibly grateful for that. In the meantime, you lot, stay free, and we will be continuing to discuss this matter. Praise the Lord.
So, we'll follow that one, see where that one goes. Unfortunately, yes, he is right. In cases, the law is used as a weapon. If he is guilty, I hope he's brought to justice. If he is innocent, I hope that it is found quickly in his favor. We'll see where it goes. Alright, just a couple more here from NPR. Le Pen supporters rally in Paris, turning a protest into a populist show of force. Coming to NPR from the Associated Press. Convicted of embezzling public funds and banned from running for office, far-right politician Marine Le Pen stood unshaken before a sea of French flags in Paris on Sunday. For 30 years I have fought against injustice, and I will continue to fight. Thousands of supporters gathered at Place Vauban, near the Golden Dome of Les Invalides in the tomb of Napoleon, for what was billed as a protest, but observers say it had all the markings of a campaign rally. The National Rally, Le Pen's party, organized the event in response to what it calls a politically motivated verdict, but with chants of Marine Presidente and "They won't steal 2027 from us." The message was clear. This was more than a protest. It was a show of populist defiance aimed squarely at France's institutions. Which, if anybody knows about taking down France's institutions, it's the French. At the heart of the charge stood Jordan Bardella, Le Pen's 29-year-old protege and president of the National Rally. His speech was fiery, accusing France's judges of trying to silence the opposition. March 29th was a dark day for France, he said, referencing the date of Le Pen's conviction. The people, they must go. They must be free to choose their leaders without interference from political judges. Though he claimed the party would respect democracy, Bardella denounced magistrates' unions and warned of a system determined to crush dissent. Supporters carried signs of reading Justice Taking Orders, Stop the Judicial Dictatorship, and others wore Je suis Marine, I am Marine, shirts or compared Le Pen to U.S. President Trump, who was convicted of civil fraud. Trump can run, why not Marine? Well, it's because your Constitution is written differently, that's why. The system is not broken, it is rigged, said Alice Triquette, a 26-year-old bartender. If they can do this to her, what stops them from coming after anyone who doesn't think like them? So, where France goes at this point, I think, is going to be insane. Politico even finishing up here saying French far-right floats toppling the government in wake of Le Pen verdict. Okay. Given that this is the nation of the guillotine, you have my attention. I'm going to go pop up some popcorn. Alright, one more on the news window, and then we'll move over to things I like, things I hate. Brian Krasenstein with the ever eternal issue of the minimum wage. Now, they've moved up now to $17 an hour minimum wage. One of the things that I will remind you, of course, right now is that I don't know about where you live, but I know here nobody works for the minimum wage because you can't get workers for the minimum wage. People can go in Uber for more than minimum wage at this point. But Bernie Sanders, who I think is going to come back and run for president again, is now calling to raise it to $17 an hour.
It is time to raise the $7.25 an hour federal minimum wage, which is a disgraceful minimum wage, to a living wage. At least $17 an hour, and that is precisely what the legislation that we are introducing today will do. It is time to raise the $7.25 an hour federal minimum wage, which is a...
He's going to run again, by the way. He is. And like I said, the market is taking care of the minimum wage thing right now. And unless we have, which I think that's part of the reason that some of this is coming out again at this point, a major market crash, and OnlyFans stops being a viable labor model for women, then yeah, I think that we're going to come to a point where people are going to start working under that. But I don't know anybody right now who has a job that's lower than $17 an hour. I don't know about up here, because I haven't seen a lot of help wanted signs out here, but I know in La Crosse, the local culvert starts at 18. Starts at 18. So the 725 thing, I don't know anybody who works for that. Nobody. Your results may be different. Again, this might be a locality thing, but yeah, the market has demanded a higher wage. Faster than the government ever could. Alright, let's move over to the other tab on things that I like and things that I hate. But before we do that, of course, we'll read the rules of acquisition. Now, the Ferengi rules of acquisition are a series of commandments for the Ferengi religion, in which if you follow these, you gain social credit in order to move on to the divine treasury at your death and bid on a better life. Every week we look at one of these rules of acquisition. We talk about how it can be used in canon, if it's used in alpha canon. I've not read enough beta canon to use it for that. We talk about that. We talk about how it can be used in real life, or if it's a sharp criticism of capitalism, how it was intended to make fun of the capitalists. Every week we read one of these, we look at it, we analyze it, and we move on. Alright, where did we leave off? Boss is only worth what he pays you. Mini pass profit. Yeah, that's where we were last time. The 94th rule of acquisition. Females and finances don't mix, from the DS9 episode Ferengi Love Songs. One of the fun parts of Deep Space Nine is the fact that the Ferengi were cast off as a old-fashioned, highly patriarchal society at the time. This is one of those that do make fun of the capitalist system. This is not the one of them that we can use in our real life. But in the episode, a young female Ferengi put on clothes, put on fake ears, because the females have a smaller ear than their male counterparts. So put on fake prosthetic ears, clothing, and joined in the profit-making endeavors. And it didn't go so well, and the person was caught. Now, we remember, of course, at the end, that Grand Nagus Zek resigned his commission, turned it over to Rom, after, of course, realizing that, hey, if you let the women engage in your profit-making, you have 50% more customer base, 50% more people to buy things for, or to sell things to buy things from, etc. So, realizing, of course, that you could expand the markets like this, they expanded and equalized women in their society. Much to Quark's dissent, of course, but going back to the episode where this one came in, yes, in the end, Quark says to the female Ferengi, females and finances do not mix. It's a bit of a sentiment, and in some cases, I understand, based on some of the X's that I've had off of this, but in general, no, this is not one that I can agree with, and this is not one that goes through. So, your 94th rule of acquisition, females and finances don't mix. Let's do a few things that I hate and a couple things that I like. So, we're going through this right now, and this is some that goes on to the things that I hate side, because I don't agree with the military's insistence on hero worship, whoever's the commander-in-chief at time. Phil Holloway says Vice Admiral Shoshana Chatfield refused to hang pictures of the president and the Secretary of Defense at NATO. She's been fired for insubordination. And I don't know what her career was like before any of this either, so I don't know. We don't know anything about this woman until the fact that she refused to hang the pictures, but she has been fired at this point. She appears to be highly decorated and appears to have participated in numerous conflicts and military endeavors. Perhaps Reuters will shine some light on this. Democratic lawmakers slam Trump admin after Reuters reports U.S. Navy Admiral firing from Idris Ali and Phil Stewart. Lawmakers on Tuesday sharply criticized Trump's admin and said it was harming national security after Reuters reported the firing of U.S. Navy Vice Admiral Shoshana Chatfield, who held a senior position at NATO. Reuters first reported that Chatfield, the U.S. military rep to the NATO Military Committee and one of only a handful of female 3-star officers, had been fired. The Pentagon on Tuesday said that the Defense Secretary, Pete Hegseth, had removed Chatfield due to a loss of confidence in her ability to lead. But Democrat lawmakers said there was no justifiable reason for her removal. Why does this have to be partisan, by the way? Why is it always partisanship? Even though, again, it sounds like she's been fired for partisanship. Why does it always have to be partisan? Why do we have to do this football team mentality thing, our side versus their side? Will Republican senators ever find a voice to stand up for our national security, or is this purge ongoing to be able to continue without any consequences? Werner said in a video on X. Gillibrand said the Trump admin was harming national security. So, and yeah, I don't understand the hero worship thing of always having the picture up in the back of it. And I didn't even know it was a thing until ABC's Quantico was on. And I think, honestly, that was a ABC propagandistic thing for that, to always make sure that whenever you had the FBI director in shot, that she always had the picture of Obama behind her with that cheesy Obama grin on his face. a very prominent part of the set piece off of that. They were deifying Obama on places like that. But I don't know. I think that this was a bit excessive as well. Alright, other things that we hate, or I hate, I don't know what you hate. Facebook to shut down fact-checking program on Monday. Officially over. That means no new fact checks and no new fact checkers. Now, usually you'd come back and say this is a thing that I like, but I think that it's important for people to come back out and be able to fact check. You still have the comment system, of course, and people can come back and argue, but to have a user-based fact-checking system like community notes on X, I like that idea. And I kind of hope that something like that would go forward, even though I don't use that I don't use Facebook, so I don't really have a skin in the game for there. Meta, the parent company of Facebook, announced Friday that its fact-checking program in the U.S. would be officially over on Monday, when it will roll out. Oh, it is! Oh, this goes over on things that I like. So, their internal fact-check. I didn't read this one before we did this. Clearly, you can see that. So they are going to a community note model versus having their chosen people do all the fact-checking. The news comes after Zuckerberg announced in January the company would end fact-checking and move to restore free speech on Facebook, Instagram, and Threads starting Monday. Fact-checkers will no longer be able to rate new content, and old fact-checks placed on content will no longer appear. Instead of fact-checks, Meta will adopt an X-style community note system where users can add context to posts, which are then rated by other users. Anyone will be able to sign up to be a contributor to community notes if they're over 18 and have verified accounts for over 6 months. That's not me. I don't pay for the verification. I debated paying for my X verification because I was actually invited at the pilot for our community notes. I was invited to join that one. But I didn't pay for the blue check, so I didn't get it. So this is actually something that I like. I like this. Back to things that I hate. Democrats not acting like the party of slavery. Challenge. Level impossible. Derek Evans, a congressional candidate, I think, for West Virginia. I don't think he is a current. He's a candidate for Senate in West Virginia right now. And he's becoming very popular and very boosted on X. With this post saying, Jasmine Crockett suggests we need illegals because we done picking cotton. This video is at Grace Baptist Church in Connecticut. The fact is, none of y'all trying to go and farm right now. We done picking cotton. So again, we go back and import a slave class because nobody wants to do the work for a regular working wage, apparently. I don't know.
So I had to go around the country and educate people about what immigrants do for this country, or the fact that we are a country of immigrants.
Right.
The fact is, ain't none of y'all trying to go and farm right now. Okay, so I'm lying. Raise your hands. You're not. We done picking cotton. We are. You can't pay us enough to find a plantation.
I know that's right.
So I had to go around the country and...
So you want to import people to work for sub-minimum wage under the threat of deportation if they don't do what you say. I hate this argument. I do. I've hated it for a long time. When people started saying the Mexicans do the job that other people won't do. That's been one of the first things that came out of my mouth when I heard that is, so you're bringing a slave class. Great. All right, from the New York Post, Feds forked over $4.6 billion for new furniture since 2020, despite just half of employees showing up for work, per Watchdog. Now, see, I don't mind getting the furniture, even though the offices are empty, work from home or everything. I know that New York Post is trying to build this, so that's what bothers me. Why does new furniture cost $4.6 billion? Is this a no-bid contract thing? Is that what's going on with this? Can we have bids? Can we see if somebody can do it for half that cost? Can we see if somebody can do it for a tenth of that cost? I don't know how many federal buildings that there are, but I bet you over 5 years, it doesn't cost more than $1 million to put new furniture in them. Definitely not more than 10 million. And that's buying the top of the line stuff, guys. Come on. 4.6 billion for new furniture over 4.5 years, really? I have a problem with that. Other things that I hate, Kansas Governor Laura Kelly flip-flops on Snap soda ban, vetoes bill from Luke Rosiak. And this is not on things that I hate for reasons that I think that most people would assume from me, that I want to come back out and say, ban all that soda from Snap. The reason this is on things that I hate is because we really need some consistent messaging from people at this point. We do. I mean, Laura Kelly was one of the chief voices against soda on Snap, and then just at the last second, like, oh, nope, veto. Arbold is going to make a meme out of what I said off of that. That's awesome. Kansas Governor Laura Kelly asked the federal government to let her state prohibit food stamps from being spent on soda and candy, then reversed course and vetoed a bill passed by the legislature to cut back on taxpayer-subsidized junk food. Oh, I know why, because she's a Democrat. So she got pushback from her party, that's why. She went back and tried to solve a financial crisis and then got pushback from her party. That's why. I thought that Kansas had a Republican governor for whatever reason. The Democrats' abrupt flip-flop is the latest example of strange behavior following a lobbying campaign by the soda or candy industries. It wasn't lobbying from the soda and candy industries. It was constituency came back and said, what do you think you're doing? Come on, we want our free stuff. In March, the Kansas legislature passed a bill instructing the Secretary for Children and Families to request a waiver from the U.S. Department of Agriculture to exclude candy and soft drinks from the definition of eligible foods. So, it passed. The representatives of the people wanted it, and then it turned around and got challenged. A couple more on things that I hate, and we're going to go right to the Daily Wire for the rest of it. MSDNC's Chris Matthews struggled to wrap his brain about the fact that trees grow in America. From Virginia Cruta. Chris Matthews on MSNBC. We get so much for our lumber, our 2x4s from Canada. What are we going to do now? Have more lumber made in the U.S.? What's our plan now? Are we going to create more wood? That's it. Yes, that is what we are going to do.
But there's another thing. I watched on the evening news last night, one of the other networks, and I watched the issue of lumber. Now, you see, we get so much of our lumber, our 2x4s, from Canada. What's where we get it from? Canada. We get our newsprint from up there for newspapers. The fact is we get it. What are we going to do? Have more lumber made in the United States now? What is our plan now? Oh, we're not going to import wood, so we're going to make more wood? We're going to create more wood? Is that it? I don't think we are in a position to simply replicate the imports coming into this country with our own products. They can't always be done. And I think if a wood's example of that, wood. Are we going to make more wood in this country because of our...
It may be privilege on my part, but I'm saying this when I say, yes, we're going to do that. Living in a state that was built on lumber. The only reason we moved out of territory status into statehood status is lumber. I live in Wisconsin. And the great part about Wisconsin is yes, lumber is still a major industry in this state as well. But we have been lumberjacking this state for almost 200 years at this point. And our forestry actually grows. Our wooded area is bigger now than it was at statehood inception. We have 3% more forest in Wisconsin right now than we did when the state was incepted. When we became a state, because we're responsible about it, we know how to do it. It's a sustainable resource, and yes, we can lumber and log and cut down more trees and still grow more of them as they go. So yes, that's exactly what we're going to do. This is almost, by the way, for Chris Matthews, is dumb. I went to a town hall with my cousin. We were trying to get approval from the county, from the state actually it was. We were trying to get approval from the state to dredge out a pond to make a swimming pond out of. To actually clean it up, fix it, and make it suitable for people swimming. We're working on getting this all set up and everything. We go to this town hall, we have to argue our case before the state. Somebody else ahead of us in the town hall, a young woman, there was a logging company that was trying to get a permit to log a certain part of forest in a different part of Dane County. And one of the women in dissent who was protesting against this company doing this said, and I quote, "Bert, if you ever listen to this, you can confirm it. He was there with me. I don't know why these people even want to log these places. It's bad for the environment, and if they want wood, why don't they just go to the lumber yard?" I'm dead serious, I heard that. I heard this young woman say this. That is the only thing involving lumber that I've heard that is dumber than what Chris Matthews just said. Alright, a couple other things that I hate. This one. They're just coming out with this now, by the way. We have been talking about this since Power Rangers was new. The Daily Wire, picking up on a story that was actually going around various entertainment tabloids, Power Rangers writer discusses mistake with casting Black and Asian stars in series. Because College Humor has already made this video, and it's made the rounds. It's been making the rounds for 20 years. Because Walter E. Jones and Thuy Trang, the Black and Chinese actors who were cast as Zack and Trini, the Black and Yellow Rangers respectively, it was insensitive for them to be cast in that role. From Amanda Harding, a writer for the 90s show Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, says the casting decisions made at the time were a mistake. None of us are thinking stereotypes, former Power Rangers head writer Tony Oliver said during the newly released episode of the docuseries Hollywood Demons, which is titled Dark Side of Power Rangers. I might actually watch that. The writer mentioned how the black character was the Black Ranger and the Asian character was the Yellow Ranger. Oliver said his assistant pointed out in a meeting one day, "It was such a mistake," he added, per Entertainment Weekly. The popular kids series debuted on Fox Kids in '93. Head writer said the Black Ranger, Zach Taylor, Walter E. Jones, seemed to have the swagger of the group, while the Yellow Ranger, Twinny Kwan, was the peaceful one who tends to be the conscious of the group. He also noted that Trang was not initially cast as the Yellow Ranger, but was added after the pilot was shot, and their first pick, Audrey Dubois, quit for the show. Series co-creator Shuki Levy said in a 2013 interview that with Complex that casting Jones and Trang in those particular roles wasn't intentional at all. Uh-huh. Yeah. The documentary also aired camcorder footage from the set showing Jones saying, "My name's Walter Jones, I play Zach, I'm black, I play the Black Ranger, go figure." What gets me is that I actually found out about this before I found the Daily Wire article from Walter Jones's Instagram, where he was talking about this, and he is against the people standing back on this. He's more in favor of the fact that he says he was one of the first black superheroes on TV. He wasn't, by a long shot. But still, he found it to be good representation that he was allowed to be on the screen for this even at all. So there is, of course, some dissent and controversy with that one, but I don't think it was as big of a deal as people thought it was. From the Daily Wire, John Stamos defends himself after attending an event at Mar-a-Lago. It's not political rather. We've come so far politically that, especially with Hollywood, it's a big purity test at this point. If you're in the club, then you're not allowed to go back and join the other club. Meanwhile, Stamos is out at a charity event for nursing, for a 501c3. A cause that he apparently deeply believes in. So, I'm trying to figure out what the big issue here is with this, but apparently there is one. And the last one that I hate today comes from, again, the Daily Wire. I said we were going to power through all the things I hate. From the Wire. 55% of leftists say they could somewhat justify a Trump assassination, per study. He's not going to make it to the end of his term, is he? I hope that he does, by the way. And this is not a call for action for anything else. At this point, don't ban YouTube. But, I mean, the temperature is getting ratcheted up, and the people who are pushing the leftoids at this point, they just don't stop pushing the get enraged button over and over again. That's what happened, and I know they keep trying to say that the crooks moron in Butler was actually a Trumpoid and this was all staged and everything else like that. That wasn't staged. That would be the stupidest thing in the world to stage. And it was a real assassination attempt because he had real bullets because he shot 2 people in the crowd. So they're getting to that point. Let's do a couple things I like and let's head out of here. Alright, things that I like today. I have been playing Breath of the Wild again. Now, we've done this on things that I like before, but I honestly, as I got more and more into it, like when I first did this, I had just first started playing it. And as I got into it more, I was less and less impressed by it because, well, it's difficult. They're throwing you in at the top. You have to go through a mission, get 4 spirit orbs before you can open up the rest of the game and move on to other things with that. But they give you no instructions, they give you no guidance, no nothing. They don't teach you how to use the game's core mechanics or anything else like that. But with that being said, once you're through the intro, once you know the core mechanics, and once you understand how to go back and do things, which just happened for me last week, the game actually becomes incredibly fun. And it's rewarding to go back and have to learn that for yourself. So we are going to watch the trailer for Breath of the Wild. Let's have a look. intensifies.
The history of the royal family of Hyrule is also the history of the Calamity Ganon, a primal evil that has endured over the ages.
Tells me that you have no recollection of me, however.
I think you are now ready to hear what happened 100 years ago.
Everything I've done up until now, it was all for nothing.
Here it comes!
You must save her, my daughter.
So,
Open your eyes.
If you haven't played it, I would suggest that you give it a try, especially if you like 3D Zelda. I know that Palm and I were talking about that a bit, because she doesn't like the top-down ones as much, whereas I love the top-down ones, but I know that this one was also built on the framework of a top-down, even though it's a 3D one now. But yeah, if you slept on this one, or the getting through the mountains challenge was too hard, because it was, go back and give it another try. Once you get past those first 4 spirit orbs, the game definitely opens up, and it's a blast. It really is. Alright, couple other things that I like. From the Daily Wire, Disney halts production on live-action Tangled after Snow White disaster, per report from Amanda Harding. Disney has reportedly halted production of a live-action version of the movie Tangled following the disastrous results of the recent release Snow White. The Greatest Showman director Michael Gracie was hired as director, while Jennifer Caton Robinson, who also wrote Thor: Love and Thunder, was the scriptwriter rather. But now, according to sources who spoke with The Hollywood Reporter, the project is on hold. You know what I have to say to that? Good. Good. Do you know why I have to say good to that? Because I want you to make a movie that's worth watching, that people want to come back out and see, and not use the controversy of whatever controversial thing that you put into this movie and shove into this movie. I want you to actually use your advertising budget and sell this movie to me, not just everyone wants to go back and hate watch it because stupid Rachel Ziegler or something like that. Make a movie that's worth watching again. From what I understand, and I haven't seen Tangled, it was a movie that was worth watching, and a lot of people seem to like it. Do something worth it, and redo the Snow White one too. Actually, make it a movie that's worth watching. I can't make a judgment on the one that's out now. I have no intention to go back and watch it, but I'm not going to feed into the stereotype thing. Other things that I like: Amy Klobuchar lays a trap for witness on attacking judges, and nabs Chuck Schumer by mistake. Yes, She's going in and questioning somebody, saying, is it okay to publicly denounce judges for ruling on a partisan ruling and from a partisan way? Coming as far as to threaten some of these judges, and accidentally catches Chuck Schumer in his comments to Brett Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett by mistake. Let's listen.
And not in a partisan way, just normal. As a partner in a law firm, have you ever taken to social media to personally attack a judge who ruled against you? That's all my question is.
Senator, thanks for the question. I think that attacking judges personally and not their reasoning, well, let me just give you a quote. I want to tell you, Gorsuch, I want to tell you, Kavanaugh, you have released the whirlwind and you will pay the price.
I've asked
you. Want to know, you won't know what hit you if you go forward with those awful decisions. That was something that Senator Schumer said, and I thought it was awful, and it unleashed a wave of violent threats against Supreme Court justices. I do think that's problematic, that kind of language.
I have no doubt the language is a problem on the left or right. I was just asking you.
Oops, forgot about the fact that exists. The internet didn't forget. Good job. And the last one on things that I like today. With the holiday coming up, not this coming weekend, but the next one, we come to the question, because so many people are off, it'd be a great day to go back and do holiday home improvement shopping. Well, Lowe's has decided that no, you will not do holiday home improvement shopping while you should be spending time with family, because our people get to spend time with their family. DC Drano, who still cringe, but I still have this one. Lowe's will be closing all 1,700 of its stores for an entire day on April 20th. Why? Because it's Easter, the holiest day in Christianity, and they want all their employees to spend that day with family. Congratulations. There isn't a Lowe's anywhere close to me, but I would go buy something from a Lowe's if there was one close to me. Just to show support for this idea. Even if it's a bag of jerky. Congratulations for that. And that concludes the show. We didn't make it to the 4-hour mark. We might have to open this up to another day. I don't know. I don't want to make this interfere with my familial schedule, but this is the second over 3-hour episode in a row, so I gotta figure something else out here. But for you guys, go off to your day. Enjoy. Have a great afternoon, and if you're listening back on the audio or video platform, which this episode got pretty good hits, then thank you as well, and thank you for the listen. Let's throw some outro music up and let's head out of here. Alright, well, thank you everybody who came by and hung out and stayed with me. We had a lot of lurk throughout the rest of this. Some really good active conversation. I guess I'm going to get a new meme out of this. Thank you, Arble, for that. But with that, we're out of here. Thank you again. We will see you here next week, Thursday, to have updates on what has happened with the markets, what's happened with world trade, what has happened with the next big crisis that's going to be coming out of the government. We'll see if we have updates for the Carmelo Anthony, Austin Metcalf story. I'm sure that we are nowhere near done with that one, so we'll see what happens with that. And we'll see what else comes on the news. So, take care. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy your commute home. We will see you here next time for more news, more headlines, more contemporary. Have a blast. I'm going to go get something to eat. We will see you here next time again for more news, more headlines, more contemporary. Take care. Have a wonderful day. And until we see you next time, I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary.